Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. It's Tech Talk time once again, the kind of weekly podcast we do, talking about your comments from last week and going through different things and basically how everything goes. Nice to see you, Svenska. Hopefully, you're doing all right today. But yeah, we do these live on stream on Twitch, and basically they're ways of going through like your thoughts and comments from last week. If you do have any of them, make sure to stick them in the comments section of the video. And if you want to see it live, well, you can do on Twitch. On Fridays, we know, go through them instead of Sundays, just so they're out at the same time. It's been an incredibly busy week, and I'm not going to lie, my brain is like fried. Like, it's since last, I don't even know when it was, like Thursday, no, it was last Wednesday when all of this stuff kicked off, like when it came to everything going on with the new update and stuff. I've just been working solidly, not just with the online stuff, but also like my actual work stuff and personal life stuff. I committed to a bunch of stuff to do as well, so it has just been manic, I think is the way to put it. Looking forward to Christmas so I can kind of just take 2 days to sleep and not worry about too much. But yeah, it's been crazy. So if I missed any emails or if I missed any like DMs or anything, I apologize. I'll get back onto it in the next few days and sort it out. So that's pretty much it. Starting off today, we're going to be playing the Colbert. Reason is we have a special task for the blue ship stuff, and I kind of want to just play it, kind of just want to chill and relax and enjoy life. So let's get into the comments from the last time. There was actually two separate people who did the timestamps. We had Karam Chan and also we had Maxwell. So both of these guys started doing them at the same time. So I just decided to give them both something. So even if like timestamps are done and everything, just understand, I'll still give, people different stuff. So yeah, still, it's very kind once again that people have decided to do this. And as I said, if you want some like free games or if you want, stuff like that, I'm able to give it out for doing things like this. So thank you so much for all of that stuff. Happy Friday, Zero. Nice to see you, man. Hopefully you're doing all right today. My grandmother had a family tree that was going back to the 1500s. It was nuts. Like I still have it actually. It was made on like this tapestry thing. We're not from like a big like well-known family or anything, but for some reason she just decided to do it because her family like is kind of, it was in the same area for a long time. But yeah, fucking crazy. I don't think I would have the patience to do any of that stuff. But my grandparents are very much into that. Like they even have like a painting where each stalk of the painting had like a different fruit or had like a different like area attached to it, and that was basically the painting of our family. So whenever anybody gets added, they add like a another stalk to it and something else, which is really cute. So we have Polish 204 to start with. So let's have a look what's going on. Hello, Tech. Hope you're doing splendid. I've been better, but we'll get there. At the end of the day. That's really cool, Tech. I wish I had that. I mean, you can start it now. Like that's the thing. You can set it up for future generations. It's something that at least my part of the family is going to continue with. I think it's very important to do so. I sometimes think about my perfect update. It's basically everything I want in an update. My fantasy would be an American Harrier 2, the AGM-114L, and a new LAV, together with many more upgrades to existing vehicles. I only mention America, but I have so many things I would want from a nations, I just get mad. Sometimes seeing so little and so useless additions. Anyway, thanks for all the content recently. We'll appreciate your hard work. I'll keep going. We'll keep hammering as we go. And yeah, the perfect update idea is kind of interesting. So for me, we've talked about in the past in different videos what I would like to see in the game, right? Like I would like I would like a bunch of kind of additional stuff on top of the vehicles. Of course, there's like a list of vehicles I'd like. A lot of them are British. The Obviously, not the Halifax, sorry, the Manchester would be really nice to see. Stuff like the Welkin, things like the Defiant, stuff like, the Valiant even. And, even things like the Stug 4, right? I think the Stug 4 would be incredibly nice to have over a period of time. But at the end of the day, the way that my head goes is I don't feel like any of that stuff is going to be missed out on. Yeah, the Blackburn Scuba. I don't feel like any of that stuff is going to be forgotten about, or it's not going to turn up, for example. So it's just a time thing. It's just waiting for it to turn up. So I don't really concern myself with those types of things. So for me, what's way more important is not like individual vehicles. It's actually individual systems which affect players, which is why we've talked about in the past a lot about stuff like, for example, things pertaining to prestige systems, bringing back vehicles from previous years, trying to find ways in the game to add in, ancillary vehicles like World War One tanks, or trying to make people a little bit more attached to their actual game, whether it be through, you have like a room of like posters where it shows like all your achievements or what you've completed over the years, or whether it's, kind of like a hall of fame for like a squadron, like this person has played the most, this person has the most kills, this is how they did in, World War mode season whatever, just extra stuff to kind of tie you to stuff, avatars for example, right? Or even just super simple stuff like animated profile pictures. And so for me, that is more stuff I'm interested in, not, a new banger missile or a new banger vehicle, because I know eventually, as long as the game goes on long enough, all that stuff's going to be added anyway, whereas the other mechanics or the other ideas may be a little bit more circumspect, especially when you have a think about the fact that a lot of those systems, like the Battle Pass one, the Battle Pass system in War Thunder took a lot of years to like come to fruition, especially since it was one of those systems which has been in other games for, I don't even know, by the point it came out in War Thunder, like maybe like 5 or 6 years. So they're a little bit behind the curve on it, right? And also stuff such as like I don't know what you call them, brand deals, dual deals, like cooperations, that's probably the way to put it. That's another thing that War Thunder's slowly getting into, with like doing like music videos and film stuff, but actual like content inside of the game, which is, in different areas or based on different things. Like imagine if in War Thunder, I don't know, like you got like a Fallout profile picture, or imagine if you got like a camouflage which was a Warhammer camouflage, and with like the whole fictional stuff and the way that it works, you could easily add something like that in, and it would just be a nice way of kind of cooperating between setups. The only problem from that point of view that at least I found is generally if people are into War Thunder and they're heavily into War Thunder, their likes are kind of very pigeonholed into certain areas, and you can be a little bit it can be a little bit worrying sometimes, like when you try and explore other areas and then nothing really comes of it, and obviously that means the sponsorship stuff is not really good. But that's like a side point, right? Like those are the types of things I always think about. I don't think about like individual stuff. But I know for a fact there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I would like to see this vehicle, I'd like to see that one, and I always just say the same thing. Just wait enough time, and, it'll turn up. Like everything else has, so why wouldn't that? It just really depends on what it will turn up in. Like the TOG, for example. Many people waited many years for the TOG, and it was here as an anniversary vehicle. So now people who want the TOG, who weren't around at that time, can never get access to the TOG again. Kinda sucks, doesn't it? So yeah, those are the types of systems I kind of think of. But yeah. So then we have a Blasted Hawk. Hey Tech, tuned into the Tech Talk stream, and I want to ask what could Gaijin add to the USSBAA tech tree to kind of be on the same level as the Panzer S1? Because as much as I love the ADATs, it's outclassed by the Panzer. One more thing, how do you think they could add the marketplace to console? Well, we'll tackle the second one first because it's the easier one. The second one is basically just doing a deal with whichever console provider exists, right? Because, as we said in the past, Gaijin will want the market on console. There's no reason why they wouldn't. It is negative for them that it isn't available for the console. So that is no good, right? Like that's no good for them. So there needs to be a deal done with either Microsoft or Sony, or if they decide to go to Nintendo, or even like if they want to add in the mobile stuff, like with whatever mobile stuff, whatever store is on for mobile. And that has to be done. Now, at the end of the day, hey, Tugnuts, it's nice to see you, man. At the end of the day, when it comes to Gaijin, they have been able in the past to do a lot of different things. So they have been able, they were the first game to be cross-platform, which is really weird to think about because a lot of people think about Fortnite. Fortnite was the one that got all the press, but pretty much War Thunder was, cross-platform way before Fortnite existed, which is why it was really funny, like watching all of the hype around the Fortnite being cross-platform when War Thunder literally did it years before it. So they have been leaders in many different areas, and also one of the things you got to remember about Gaijin is Gaijin used to be a console developer. So way back in the day, they've always had ties to that stuff. So when I have a look around and when I see these things and see how people deal with them and stuff, I don't see why it couldn't be the fact that stuff like that could not come to fruition. It's just there would have to be a deal done, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are trying to make a deal get done, but that's something that we'll never be privy to. But just put it like this. Is there any reason why Gaijin wouldn't want this? What is the negative for them doing this? And the answer is zero, because it literally saves them money, or if anything makes them money, because they don't have to create two separate systems for consoles and for PC, and everybody can just run on the same stuff. The only difference really, if you think about it, would be that a lot of the development that they've had to put into consoles to actually make them work would go away. But I mean, that's kind of looking behind to look forward. It's not a good way of doing things, right? So for me, yeah, that's pretty much it. When it comes to top tier air stuff, I did a video talking about the area of American AA, which I'm actually super, it needs fixing instead of the high tier stuff, is the mid tiers. So there's plenty of mid tier options. There's a few higher tier options, some more LAV setups. You could technically bring in, if you really wanted to be a nutcase, you could bring in stuff like the Patriot system or, the system that was there beforehand, the kind of towed missiles that we talked about, which was leaked, the AI stuff for the air things. So all of that is kind of possible if you wanted to. But the issue with America, just in general, thank you for the subscription, Salty Lemon. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. It's very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Even though they have these kind of stationary systems, which work in real life, they also export them a lot and don't use them as much because, obviously air superiority is something that they've kind of focused on. So a lot of the platforms that they have, which are more, I don't even want to, I suppose the way to put it is make more sense in War Thunder, which I know is an odd thing or an odd way of putting it, but you know what I mean. Like, not platforms which are just, you sit there, it auto locks, you fire a missile, then you go on to the next thing, right? So platforms which actually make more sense in War Thunder have already kind of been added, and so you basically more rely on stuff such as, you rely on stuff which is more to do with other areas of fighting. So you rely on like air superiority stuff. You rely on things like that. The reason why, there isn't an American Panzer, for example, is is because of general doctrine and how things kind of go about. There's a bunch of like test things that I suppose the Americans have worked on that you could add in. There's that M113, which has access to all of the missiles on top of it, and you have a bunch of towed stuff at the same time you could throw in. But if I'm honest, America as a nation is already super powerful in game, and the way to deal with CAS as America is to go into a fighter, which is pretty much easier to do now than it has been for a long time. So it kind of sucks, but it's like you have to really incorporate the idea of rock, paper, scissors in War Thunder now. Instead of direct competition, is this better than that? You have to go the route of rock, paper, scissors, which is important to do so. Sounds good, crazy hippie. Look after yourself, man. Hopefully you feel better. I saw 16GB update. What did they add? Just more top tier. They added the update air superiority. If you want to see the change log, it is on the website. There is a lot of different stuff that they've changed. It's a major update. Da-da-da. Next year, I think what we'll see is a big change in missiles, and also a big change in systems like that, since that is one of the parts of the game which is struggling the most. So, yeah, don't worry. There'll be some fun things coming. So we have OCS. Hi, TEC. Regarding vehicle variants, I've been looking in some Chinese vehicles, such as the VT5 and its variants, and I was wondering what sources do the Snell use, and what does it class as reputable regarding what variants have which features. So, the best thing to do if you... Well, okay. It varies depending on which nations they're using, but usually they use all of the available public documents that are there, right? So anything that's available, which is not classified, they use. They have a team of people who are literally just there to go through this information. Then, if they have issues either going to physical locations, whether it be archives or whether it be museums, they basically get people in different places to go to these areas to be able to either photocopy or take pictures and send it back to them. These are what are known as kind of coordinators. So you have the Chinese coordinator, the French one, the Italian one, and there's a British one, there's even an American one. There's one for pretty much every nation, because guess what? It's a lot cheaper to pay somebody to go to a place when they live in that country, instead of, shipping somebody out every time from wherever, like in Europe, to let's say China or let's say America. So what they'll do is they'll say to somebody, hi, so you do this other work for us, and you live in this place. We need you to go here, and we need you to talk to this person and get the information on this, because it's a physical thing and not an online thing. So they go there, they pick up the information, and then they relay it back to the team. That's pretty much it. Right? And then the team who are making those decisions, who are deciding what to add and what not to add, and also what information they have on what, put together, dossiers on different things, and then that is the basis for the kind of theoretical way the vehicle is going to work in game. Then they talk about balancing factors, then the physical model gets done. Then on top of that, you have, of course, the actual mechanics that maybe they want to bring in as well from a gameplay point of view. So yeah, you have all of these different little teams which all work together to bring the vehicle into the game. Now, in the past, one of the problems that Gaijin has had, and this is a problem that every single company has ever had, is the fact that those coordinators can sometimes be unreliable. And one thing we talked about recently, especially with the technical moderation, that a lot of people have been very hot on recently, is people have realized that there are people who are involved in these systems who are incredibly biased towards one way or another. And this means that certain information gets passed and certain information doesn't get passed. This leads to issues. The Chinese coordinator was one of the biggest kind of blowouts more recently. I did a whole video on the topic. It was hilarious to go through. I don't I don't know how else to put it, but basically you had a guy who once again asked for information. There was a team of people around him because China in War Thunder is a, first of all, large player base, and second of all, there is a lot of vehicles and a lot of information, right? So they wanted to make sure to get stuff right. Now, you have all of these factors going around, but one of the problems is the main guy who was collecting together all the sources to send to Gaijin was an idiot. And the problem with being an idiot is you usually make idiotic decisions. This guy decided that he was going to withhold information for some reason, whether it was he had an ego, whether it was he thought the information was wrong, whether it was he was just, just a person who was put in a position that shouldn't have been. That's kind of how it is, right? And because he withheld information, and people realized he was withholding information because he had people working with him who were like, hey, why didn't you pass this? Why hasn't this been changed? And he started just saying stupid stuff like, because I am the arbiter, because I control this and nobody else gets to say what is right and what is wrong. And I control the Chinese helicopters and all of this, just dumb things. Like, once again, believing they had more power than they did, the dude got booted. And then basically straight afterwards, a bunch of changes came to the Chinese tech tree. And also at the same time, a bunch of new sources were able to be used. And Chinese helicopters also were able to come into the game. So sometimes you have issues where these coordinators are the reason why these things happen, but that is the exception to the rule. I've talked to the American coordinator, the British one, the old Italian one, the South African one, and even other people who have done some side work when it comes to trying to get, information from physical locations to Gaijin. And the vast majority of time, I would say I've had very positive experiences with them all. The South African guy is fantastic. I've actually had him on a few videos talking about different things and even shown some of the gameplay that he's done. He's a university professor. He's written books on different topics. The American one is also somebody who is very heavily involved in the military side of things and very heavily involved in other side of the things, and is massively into the history of the American military for many different reasons. And as I said, they're just generally pleasant people, which is why whenever they get flack, I just don't really understand why, because their job at the end of the day is to go to place, pick up information, and refer back. But if they decide to not do that, then that's a problem. But luckily, from pretty much most points of view, they are not the issues, right? So from the way that all of this works, that's basically how the system goes, okay? Or at least did a few years ago, since I haven't, been part of that world for a while because I decided to focus on other things. So when it comes to the Chinese sourcing and everything, it is from the best sources that exist, as long as you're able to get access to them, which is the big problem. And one of the things that you'll learn about China specifically is there is a lot of misinformation about what is right and what is wrong when it comes to Chinese vehicles. And the reason for this can be many different reasons, whether it's the propaganda stuff, which happens with every nation. Hey, Vanko Babanko, nice to see you. Or whether it is just the simple fact that there are so many different variants and certain ones are really not discussed that often. And there's a lot of folklore around these things. There's also the issue, that we've talked about in the past, where literally it is not unlike a country like China to straight up rewrite parts of their history. If you've ever, there was a problem. All right, so just once again to talk about the Chinese stuff, since the Chinese culture and how they deal with things is incredibly different to others. And it has actually been really nice talking to a lot of people from China. And I have had, good conversations with them. We've even had some of them on the old style of video we used to do here, which was like, people would come on, chat about stuff. We even had some mainland Chinese coming on and chatting about stuff, which was really cool. You can actually see that last year or the year before. So the interesting thing is they understand their history, right? They're taught their history, and they're also on the internet, so they can have a look at other things, no matter how much they are sheltered from these things. And what happened in the 60s, specifically in China, is there was a big push to try and rewrite a lot of parts of their history, because it was seen as not exactly right, and there was a lot of discomfort in the country around the leadership at the time. This led to many different things happening. There was a few student revolts, there was a few just general revolts, like when it came to the people who were running the place, and there was a lot of stuff going on. So that's where the Summer of Enlightenments came along, and all of those wonderful things, right? What this led to was a lot of different parts of their history just being whole cloth changed. And changed in a way that it was similar to what happened, but the reasoning behind a lot of what happened was completely changed. And I remember when the Chinese tech tree got added, and the Chinese tech tree had the correct flags in it. It had the Taiwanese flag, and also it had the Chinese flag, but they also used the ROC and the PLA flags. And a lot of people took real exception to this, because they basically were saying, well, why is Taiwan not being labeled as a country? Because Americans, for some reason, have this idea in their head that Taiwan is just one of these things that everybody sees as an individual country, and that's just how it is. There's a real problem with this, though. AC Squatch, nice to see you. The American government doesn't recognize Taiwan as a country. The vast majority of countries in the world do not recognize Taiwan as a country. They're put in the same place as stuff like the Vatican, for example, where they're seen as more independent states than they are independent countries, because they know that if they actually label them as a country, what ends up happening is, stuff hits the fan, because you've pissed off China, which has more than 1 billion people. So what ended up happening is Gaijin did exactly what they should have done. They followed the standard international line on this. They even went a step further, that they actually added the old flags, so the PLA flags and the ROC flags. They also labeled stuff Taiwan, and they labeled them after the armies of the era, which they didn't have to do any of that stuff, and technically is taking a political stance. But people weren't happy with this, because they're moronic and they can't read. So this led to a bunch of issues with what was true, what was false, and I had to explain to a lot of incredibly ignorant Europeans, specifically Northern Europeans, and also incredibly ignorant Americans, about what history in China is like, and also what is truth and what is untruth. Because just because you are taught a specific version of history does not mean that is the only correct source of history. And as you get older, especially if you talk to a lot of historians who have been through university for many years, one of the things that they'll discuss is the fact that history is not a binary thing. History, depending on what you find, can change a lot, and a lot of it is extrapolated upon, and more modern history is more based around what is culturally correct at the time. Which is why after the Second World War, there was a lot of retelling of what happened to try and make it so people just didn't want to exterminate the German country. Because that could have easily happened if the real truths of how people dealt with stuff came out. Same with many other areas, of the world. Happy Friday, Peter the Great. Nice to see you. So trying to explain to somebody who has a binary view of how something works when it ain't binary is really tough. And it's one of the problems I've had forever in War Thunder, where most, if not all, of War Thunder lives in this kind of grey area where they try and make stuff as realistic as possible, but it's also got to be fun, and it's got to be engaging and interesting. And also, at the same time, you have to want to play it. Whereas another set of people just want it to be fun, another set of people want it to be historical, and then even the historical guys, a lot of them have just decided in their heads what is historical and what is not historical, and a lot of them are just straight up wrong, because you can't do that with a lot of things. Or they take what they've learned from certain areas in their life and from the countries that they're from, and they apply it to everywhere else. For example, the way that classifications work, the way that even classified information works, and all of that. And it's just, it can be very draining to deal with. And China is one of those places which works quite differently to a lot of others. So yeah, it's very different compared to it. So it's something to, at least food for thought, I think is probably the way to put it. So then we have the Penman. Let's see. Hello again, Tech. Hello. I absolutely adore some of the older British cars. Excellent choice with the Healey. Personally, I'm more into classic muscle and stuff like the Jensen Interceptor. Also, if you're liking a lot of Thin Lizzy and similar bands, I highly recommend Rush and Joe Satriani if you aren't listening to them already. I'll give them a go. Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like that period of music quite a lot. I just wish, as I said, they were still alive. So I could actually go see them. I did. If you ever have a chance and you do like Thin Lizzy, there's a cover band that does Thin Lizzy pretty well. Let's see. I went to go see them twice actually. Let's see. I don't know if they're still touring, but they were at least a few years ago. Thin Lizzy from Texas, goddamn. There's a band called Yellow Pearl, but that wasn't them. Limehouse Lizzy, I think, is the one that I went to go see. Yeah, Limehouse Lizzy. They were actually, they were on at the same time as a... What the hell just happened? They were on the same time as another band, which was... a AC/DC tribute band, which was pretty fun. There's a lot of bots in this naval game, yeah. They're trying to fill it out. But yeah, I think overall that type of music really is fun. But also at the same time, like for example, yesterday we went to a theatre performance, which was quite fun. And then tomorrow we're going out to a pub, and then the next day we're going out to go see Vivaldi's Four Seasons. So I'm very much all over the place when it comes to music, and I do enjoy a lot of it. Like I went to go see Iron Maiden a few weeks ago. That was really fun. Hey Papa Stalin, nice to see you. Yeah, they were incredibly enjoyable. If you ever get to see Iron Maiden, just go for it. They still have the same energy that they did ages ago, and you know they're really enjoyable to watch. So definitely worth doing that one. At the end of the day, hoping that in the future they continue, because they are pretty old now, and you know, as somebody who's a fan of also, I wish I was better with names. Oh god, what's their name? The guys who did Mean Girl and Rockin' All Over the World and In the Army now. They're a British band, Status Quo. So Status Quo, like, they're pretty much all dead now. So I saw them once where I think only one of them was dead, and they were fun. And I just wish that I could be in a situation to see them again, but c'est la vie. But then there's a lot of them, like, I mean, Motley Crue, right? Like, Motley Crue I really enjoy, but I've heard that they're absolutely awful live, which wouldn't surprise me, because a lot of those bands were pretty bad. But, like, seeing something like Prime Ozzy would have been so fun. Like, there is a live, there's a live recording of him in concert doing Crazy Train with his original guitarist before, you know, he died in the accident. Oh my god. Like, I can't... I understand why people pay a lot of money to see these things, you know? Like, because that, to me, just seemed amazing. Thank you for the subscription, Torbai. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. It's very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Like, I wish tickets weren't that expensive nowadays, but also at the same time, the bands that I like to go see, which are a little bit more like on the heavy side, like even when we went to go see I Wrestled a Bear once, you know, or Apocalyptica was super fun. There's a band, Enslaved. We went to go see Enslaved once. They were amazing. Enter Shikari were, I mean, they were okay, I suppose. They existed. But yeah, there's a lot of them which are incredibly fun. So just I think concerts in general, there should be a part of them where it's just people like getting out frustration, you know, going crazy and just throwing around their bodies and just having fun, and a lot of those bands kind of encompass that, which is cool. It was Zagward's son, so it was pretty cool that Ozzy brought Zach on to eventually fill Randy's spot. That's pretty awesome, yeah. That's cool. But yeah, the Ozzy Osbourne is such an enigma. I find him just so interesting to just kind of learn about. Because he really is one of those true, like... He's just a creative genius, but he's also a nutcase, which for me is my favorite type of people. When I was at university, one of my favorite sets of people were the guys who were super high on the autism scale, but also laser focused on like one thing. And there was a lot of them in like the area that I was in, which was, you know, mathematics, science, and stuff like that. And it was just fascinating talking to them because they were so one-dimensional, but the way that they saw that dimension was just so weird, and it was fantastic. I loved it. But also, if I'd stayed in that world, I would have just gone nuts, and I would have also been completely worthless to society. So I much prefer the area I inhabit right now, where I can be useful and also haven't gone nuts. So pretty positive. So then we have DESG. Darkside Ganja. Hey Tech. I'm predominantly, a air main and grinding through heli PvE with the MI-24V. In spading it wasn't so bad. However, my issue in Ground RB being absolutely horrific for me to grind. Do you have any more unheard suggestions, including playstyle, that can trim down the grind a little more? For helicopters, I mean, helicopters is an odd one. There is technically the easiest way to grind out helicopters is in heli PvE. It isn't the fastest, but it is the easiest. One of the problems you have with CAS elements in ground forces specifically is they take a massive hit on RP that you get from actions, because it's seen by Gaijin, which I think is a fair cop, that it is easier to get a kill in ground forces than it is in air forces, in the separate game modes. So in ground, it's easier to get a kill than it is in an air game mode, right? So that means you get less XP, less SL, less RP for a engagement and for a kill in ground forces than you do in air forces. So it's going to take longer to grind stuff like aviation in ground if that's what you decide to do. But your only two options with helicopters are either ground or with, you know, the other one, which is PvE heli. So if heli PvE is getting boring, all I can say is, first of all, try and bring along somebody else so you can chat about stuff, you know, listen to podcasts, watch TV shows, get a second monitor to be able to do something else on while doing it, which is, you know, something I've done for many years, not just for streaming, but also doing stuff like also doing stuff like, watching TV shows or, listening to news while playing, while spading bombers and things like that. Or really the only other way is light tanks around the area, use light tanks, get into a helicopter early in the game with ATGMs and pop a few people and then land and then go again. Because you do actually get a bonus for landing, repairing and taking off again, which is the same in air as well. One of the ways to actually make way more SL and RP in air realistic and stuff like that is after you've done your actions, instead of waiting around and seeing if you can get the last guy who's gone back to base, it's actually usually better to reset, so go land and take off again, and you get way more RP and SL for doing that. And that's the same in ground as well. So the longer you last in a game, and also the more actions you do, but also doing that reset is incredibly important. But I wouldn't bother with just like heli rushing and trying to rocket things. I would use heli PvE to get to the ATGMs, and then once you have the ATGMs, using them in ground after a quick respawn with a light tank and maybe a kill afterwards. And I know I've got to be honest, like grinding out helicopters is the hardest thing to do in the game. They made it easier. they definitely made it easier, but it still is one of the more painstaking things to do because of, the whole way that everything works. And it sucks. It really does. I wish it was different, and I don't know how else you would change it to make it so, but at least they've taken positive steps towards it, kind of going forward. So yeah, that's pretty much the only tips I have. And like rocket rushing is a waste of time. That's a huge one. Like it just basically means that you just get hammered over and over and over again, and it's just not fun. It takes away your feeling, it takes away how everything goes, and it's just not worth it, Getting them is easier, getting mods for them is still torture. Yeah, exactly. So like researching the helicopter in the first place, not too bad, because you can do that with ground vehicles. You don't get the bonuses from doing the mods and stuff, but it's still fine, right? It's a lot better than it was. But actually grinding out the vehicle itself, oh boy, is it a bit rough. So that is definitely a problem still in the game. I don't really know how they fix it, apart from removing that kind of limiter that exists for helicopters in, ground RB. Maybe actually seeing ground and airplanes as helicopters and airplanes as different things instead of treating them as the same thing. Maybe that's what they should do. But unfortunately right now that's not the case. So then we have Spicy Boy Daniel. In my opinion, Naval feels like cookie clicker, and I support submarines getting implemented as it provides something different. And for my question, what do you think about the ground being to grind focused in regards to the modifications and nations like Japan having 3 and 4 variants of the same vehicle? Right. What do you think about the ground being too grind focused? I'm guessing is the way. Well, let's start with the naval point. Yeah, it's definitely more cookie clicker. I do agree with that, but that's kind of just what naval combat is. Stuff like submarines and carriers do change up how these things work, but also at the same time they can add in elements which just are frustrating. For me personally, I kind of like how naval is right now because I can just kind of chill and shoot things, and that is something that I've enjoyed in naval. It is nice having parts of the game which are more relaxed than others. I don't need everything to be heavily competitive or, heavily in a way where I have to focus a lot. Sometimes it's just nice lining up targets and shooting them in the face, and that's why naval can be enjoyable for me. The other part, the grind focus thing, over this last year they've made huge strides in making it way easier to grind out ground vehicles. You have end of the line vehicle changes, so you don't, the modifications are not that expensive. You have stuff such as any folded vehicle is now half the cost RP wise, and also at the same time they've just done massive reductions recently for RP stuff. Greetings, Effie Altis, nice to see you. Doing okay today, just a bit ill, but we're all right. So they've definitely realized there's a problem, and they have put in a lot of work to fix it and help it, and it's been nice. I think, we can all agree on that. Everything has got easier to grind. I don't think ground is grind focused. I don't really think any of the game is grind focused. I think the only parts that are more grind focused are the events right now. And that's because that's kind of like my mindset of the game. I don't play the game to grind out vehicles. I kind of play the game now for the battle pass stuff and using that as a kind of goal. And then we have all the secondary goals, like sometimes the decals, achievements, and then also other things, such as whenever new vehicles come in, we like to have a look at them, and also just the general events that are around. So that's more like mindset focused, and what you look at and what you see as a thing to kind of go forward with. And the reason why there's so many variants of the same vehicle in the game is because the opposite way of doing it is only having, let's say, one variant in the game. And the problem with doing that is you'll have nations in the game which will have a bunch of different vehicles at the same VR bracket, whereas you'll have others which will have one. And this is something we actually saw over the years for many nations like Japan. Like, I was around when there was only one Type 16. I was around when there was only the Type 74. I was around when there was only the STA 1 and 2. Or even just the Cheeto, right? Way back in the day. Have a look at the Japanese ground lineup when it was released into the game. Right, just have a look at it, go through it, and then go, do you think that would be fun to play? Yeah, let's see if we can actually look at it, because I can probably find it. And remember that also at all of the BR brackets that you have access to, right? I found the update they were in, actually, so maybe we can just have a look at that. There's a bit of post, so the dog's gonna go nuts until somebody picks it up. So, just to let you know. There we go. So, the Japan was introduced into the game. Is that gonna... No, it's not gonna show it. Yeah, I'll find it. I might have to do... Right. I'll be back in 2 seconds, okay? Because AJ is obviously going a bit nuts. Alright, sorry, I'm back. Yeah, it was just mail that got delivered. But, I'll try and find the Japanese release tree. Because I think it's important to have a look at these things. But unfortunately nowadays, there's just a ton of people who have made... like, extra release trees. And I'm just trying to find the actual one... Like, I don't care about the expanded ones. I want to actually see the... There we go, I found it, okay. God damn, finding that was impossible. Right. Here we go. So this was the release tree. Right here. Okay? So this is what you got. This was the big good old release tree. So, nice to see you, Moon. Hopefully you're doing good. Where is my vehicle going now? So you had, let's see, the Hargo, you had the Chaffee, the Igo, the Hawaii, 76 Sherman, Type 61, STB1, STA1, STA2, Type 74. So back then, if you have a look at like the release of the tech tree, this was before a lot of variants got put in. So your top tier vehicle was the Type 74, right? And it was actually a pretty good vehicle at the time. They had to buff it though, after it wasn't too good. But one thing you'll see from all of these vehicles is there were huge gaps between all different types of them, right? And remember, 2 of them were premiums. So the Chiha shotgun and also the heavy tank number 6 were premiums. So at most BRs, especially after about 6.0, 6.3, you had one vehicle and nothing else. You had no AAs. The CAS elements were pretty weak. You had basically the kicker, and that was it. And you just had to deal with it, you know? And it wasn't very fun. So basically, this would be what the tree would be like if you didn't have all the variants. So you would spawn once, and that's it. You wouldn't be able to do anything else. And you would have to, you know, just kind of leave if you didn't have a backup, or just, you know, lose. Doesn't seem very fun, you know? Hey, Big Bison, nice to see you. Nice to see you too, Alex. So, yeah, and a lot of the time, one of the big problems with nations in the game is they just didn't have proper lineups. So people wouldn't play them because why would you when you could play another nation that did have proper lineups? And that sucks. So now, hopefully, it's better. And that's why you have more variants of the same vehicle. Because when you don't, it sucks. It basically gives you more options to be able to play different stuff, but also doesn't really take away from the overall grind, especially if they're folded. So it's a more of a positive thing than a negative thing, which I think we can all kind of get around. The next one is Angry Doggo. So let's see what it says there. Morning, Red Ned. Hopefully you're doing good. Sorry, I'm just trying to get away from a bunch of torpedoes. Let's see. Like, if you didn't have variants of vehicles, you would be... Imagine if you only had one Abrams. Or imagine if you only had one Challenger. Or you had one Type 90. Or you had one T80, one T72. Because there's so many different ones with so many different things attached to it, it's very hard to create a world where that's the case. And also, you know, to actually balance that, if you gave everything it's just what it had in its best sense, it would be impossible to balance and sort out, you know? How do you make it through the cancer of playing in 3 times the BR of my tank? I would ask you, why are you playing in 3 times BR of your tank? That's probably the first question. Seems like a bad idea. Why would you do that to yourself? Let's see. Yeah, 1 Sherman. Can you imagine? You get 1 Sherman. You know? 1 Chaffee. 1 Bulldog. Be crazy. Or even just extend it like 1 Spitfire. You get 1 Spitfire, and that's it. It's not really doable, you know. So we have Angry Doggo. Hey Tech, hope you're doing good. I'm alright, just a bit fatigued. I don't have a question, but a tinfoil hat theory. Well, I'm all ears. Let's see. Not long after the economic changes earlier this year, I travelled to Budapest. Coincidentally, the Guardian office is there, so I just had to visit. And you know what? They actually let me in. I even talked to a dev or 2. They were quite nice. 1 or 2 days after I came home, the roadmap was published. Do you think that this is a coincidence? Because I don't think so. I like to live in a world where you were the reason, Angry Doggo, why we got all the positive changes. So, well done. You get the crown of the War Thunder 2023 Messiah. So, there you go. Now, just remember, next year you will be the people's champion. People will look to you to try and solve all the issues now. So, well done. That's funny. No, I mean, I tell you what, as I've said many times in the past, like, pretty much everybody I've chatted to when it comes to Gaijin has been, you know, positive, has been very kind, especially on the development side of things. So I personally, if it is available, I generally think it's a good idea for people to kind of get to know the people behind projects. So not to like harass them or annoy them or anything, but just to kind of see that they're humans and that they work very hard and are very passionate on what they do. And as I said, like I I have a lot of admiration for many of the guys who have been involved in War Thunder for a long time because they have created a product that nobody else has created. Right? They have been able to innovate in so many different ways, and now we're at year 11 slash 12 slash 13, depending on when you look at it, and nobody else has even come close to what War Thunder does. Isn't that nuts? Can you think about a single product like in gaming that is anywhere in that realm? Like MMOs, like people talk about World of Warcraft. Final Fantasy did it. Black Desert Online did it. A bunch of Korean MMOs were able to do it, like create very successful products over that general style. FPSs, there's been like a million of them. Indie games, when it comes to like the Left 4 Dead setup. So the idea of, the idea of like, little co-op games where you go around different arenas. Tons of those are super successful. Like at the end of the day, for every genre, there's like multiple sets of games which are incredibly good and work incredibly well. In War Thunder, that isn't the case. There's just War Thunder. It's nuts. It's insane to think about. And I think a lot of the guys behind the projects will be insanely proud of what they were able to do and continue to do. Hey, Abby, nice to see you. How's the new PC working? Everything going well? Hopefully you're doing good. Alright. Let's do this. I don't think I won that game. Nope. Sad. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And, nice to see that you had a good time, man. It's good to know. So then we have Ciorl, or CEORL. Hey, man. Hey, Tech Man. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing good. And, as I said, just a bit tired, but looking forward to Christmas, There's only one GTA, but I don't know what it does that nothing else does. Yeah, there's only one GTA, but then also, you had Sleeping Dogs back in the day, right? You had stuff like Saints Row, that did the whole open world wacky shit. But yeah, I do agree. The GTA is definitely like the monolith of that genre. That's very true. UPC is lovely. I can be a bunny in spade vehicles 10 times as fast. Life goals. Nice. No, I'm glad to hear that. That's great. But no, I'm doing well, Abby. I've realized over like the last few days, I'm incredibly fatigued. And I'm sure a lot of you guys noticed it like over the last week or so. I basically was working 16-hour days since last Wednesday to this Thursday. And last night, I realized that I'd basically had about an hour's worth of sleep in 4 days. And it kind of just all came to a head, and I was just sat there, and my brain was like swelling, or at least it felt like it was swelling, like I had like real bad pains in my head, and I was like, okay, I think I've hit the limit. So I just like passed out for a night, and I feel a lot better this morning. But at the same time, I feel like the next few days, I might have to just take a little bit of time and just relax. And maybe do, slightly shorter streams and, slightly less content just to try and get myself on a level where I'm, in slightly better space where my head doesn't feel like it's about to blow up. So, obviously bear with me, but I should be raring to go by next Monday. Just need a slight bit of relaxation. Nice to see you, MJ. Hopefully you're doing well. Good evening, Marlo. Nice to see you. The theme of this winter festival event is redheads, and yes, maybe every theme every year might be redheads, but it's a good theme, so we will continue with the theme of redheads. But anyway, so back to the question. Any suggestions on how to play the Abrams, like where to position or how what tactics should be used? The Abrams is like it's a Swiss Army knife of top tier. Like I know a lot of people talk about it not being very good, and that's fine. It is good. Even the standard one has a very good reload. It out reloads pretty much everything that's at the BR apart from certain autoloaders. It's incredibly mobile. It's good forwards. It's backwards. It's very survivable, and it has good targeting speed and all of that stuff. So the way that you play the Abrams is the way that you play a lot of other MBTs, which is use the mobility to get to power positions on maps, which hopefully at the point that you're at in War Thunder, if you've got to that, you should know them by now, and use them to be able to clatter people by going against their weaknesses. You know, if it's Soviet MBTs, you know that they don't have great targeting speed at the level of the first Abrams, so it can take them a while to get their guns on. So you have to exploit it when they're not looking or they're moving around the place. When it comes to dealing with vehicles which maybe are more similar to you, then you have to learn weak spots and how to disable the gunner, the driver, and the commander in one shot. When it comes to dealing with light vehicles, you have to be able to react fast and also know where to shoot them to take out the crew quickly, right? And, that's pretty much it. Like, the Abrams, honestly, can play any playstyle you want. So because of that, and also because they gave it a better round more recently, the standard Abrams has the M833 now, right? I'm pretty sure it does. So basically, like, you just have to play it like you play everything else. There's a ton of like gameplay videos of people kind of showing what you can do with the Abrams, and the main thing I would say is experimentation is probably the way to kind of learn how to do it. But also, it doesn't have a weakness. Like it does some things slightly worse than others, but the whole package is so powerful with the Abrams. It's incredibly fun to play. Like, it's super nice. Let's see. How'd you get rich on SL? If you don't have premium, turn off auto repair and play naval. If you do have premium, play naval. Easy. I just unlocked the MVD mod for the Tonka F3. What do? It's in first person, isn't it? But I honestly have no idea. So then we have Maxol. Hey Tech, love the talks. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Let's just shoot off the rounds here. There we go. I'd like to see more prototypes in the game, like the VK3001 and the SG122, but they wouldn't all fit in the game in a way that they would offer something another vehicle doesn't already offer, and having them all as event vehicles would unfortunately put them behind this you weren't playing the game so this period, and you weren't playing the game during this period, so you can't get them category. I guess adding them as tech tree vehicles wouldn't hurt. I mean, you could use them in ground, Teddy. I guess adding them as tech tree vehicles wouldn't hurt, even if they aren't always that useful. I'd see Guardian wouldn't put the effort to that and focus on important add-ons instead. What do you think? It really depends on, as you said, their potency. So, for example, they do add prototypes into tech trees, and it is to fill gaps. The most recent one that I can think of is, of course, the what is the word? The VK, the Proto Panther, the prototype Panther. There was a huge gap between the Panzer IVs and the Panther and the Tiger in the German tech tree. There was like some SPGs there and some AAs, but they didn't have any mediums. So they added that vehicle into that gap to make it the progression through the tech tree easier for people. So there wasn't this huge gap where people just have a Tiger and don't have anything else, right? Which is what was happening a lot in the game. So prototypes have the unique ability to be slightly different than their main production ones, slightly worse or slightly better in different ways, so therefore they're perfect BR gap fillers, whether it be above a vehicle in production or below a vehicle in production. So I honestly think they do have a lot more chance to be in tech trees because of that. I think they are much more useful in tech trees than they are as event vehicles or, premium vehicles and such. I think the best event vehicles or premium vehicles are usually vehicles which have already got similar variants in the game, and the premium gives you obviously a boost and also maybe a slightly different, weapon system on it or something. Kind of like the Tornado IDS, for example. The Tornado IDS is, for me, kind of like a perfect premium, kind of like the, what's it called? That other one that they added, I can't remember the name. The Attacker FB1 or whatever it is, or the Hornet F whatever. They're slightly different, and they are, very slightly different from the tech tree stuff, but they offer something which is, pretty fun, and that to me I think is incredibly important. So I'm still fine with stuff like prototype. I don't like this idea that just because something's a prototype, it shouldn't be in a tech tree. I don't know where that idea came from. It's wrong and has been since pretty much War Thunder's existed. Like there's a metric ton of prototypes in tech trees, and there has been since the game started. So like I don't think they should be excluded from tech trees, and I actually think when you compare them to like other vehicles, they're some of the best tech tree fillers we have because of the fact that they offer slightly different power levels compared to the standard stuff. So that to me is the perfect place to put them. And there's several examples of this, that we can go through, which would be pretty enjoyable. So then we have Finest British Tea. That's Yorkshire tea, by the way. No competition. How would you feel about a complete restructure of some of the tech trees? As been discussed in the past, some nations like Britain are now more becoming a Commonwealth tree. Do you think nation mergers should occur? Or could it make a nation too powerful in the long run, again, such as Britain with US, German, and Russian vehicles? We're already at a point in the game where that's already happening with Sweden. Sweden has a mixture of Swedish, German, Russian, and even like American technology. So that's already happening. And one of the things, so there's two competing ideologies, and both of them are trying to be served at the same time, and it's hard to go through them. So first ideology is you want people to play a bunch of separate nations in the game, so therefore they can have unique experiences because each nation offers something different. Second ideology, you want nations to be similar enough so therefore they are balanced and also offer stuff which is similar to what people are used to in other tech trees, therefore they feel obliged to play them because it gives them a level of comfort. Now these two competing ideologies are a pain in the ass, and it would be really nice if when it came to the world and when it came to War Thunder there was only one of them. But there can't be, because different players want different things. Some players want the idea of comfort, other players want new experiences. So you have to mix and match both and give players both of the options, which is what something like a Swedish tree does, or what something like a British tree does. So in terms of the way that it is being handled, I do think eventually the idea of a nation in War Thunder disappears. And we're talking way down the line. Like, we're talking, and we're talking a very long time in the future, like 10, 15 years if it's still around, right? So the idea of, let's say, Britain in War Thunder ceases to exist. It becomes stuff like the Commonwealth. Germany ceases to exist. It becomes Central European. USSR already doesn't exist anymore, so that's already at that point. Sweden becomes Northern Europe. Israel becomes, we'll see, I suppose, in the next decade what that situation looks like. France will become another Central European setup, maybe Western Europe they'll call it, and like all of these will kind of end up in that way, so therefore they can add all the different stuff that they go ahead with. And this will be kind of like a gradual thing, because as we've talked about a lot in War Thunder and in many other places, nationalism on the face of it is still quite, an aggressive force for many people looking at different things, right? So for me, I think that's what happens. And even if the names are still the same as they, let's say the names don't change and they stay the same compared to what they are now, you're still getting a scenario where these tech trees are no longer individual tech trees. Britain no longer is a British tech tree, right? Sweden is not a Swedish tech tree. Stuff like the USSR isn't even a USSR tech tree, because once again USSR doesn't exist anymore. Things like the Italians now are also another tech tree which is no longer just Italian, and I think that is positive for everybody that's involved. I don't like it when we have a scenario where certain nations are kind of left to die because, decisions are made to not add other nations to them. So the idea of the nation state in War Thunder is no more. We go into a new age. I know a lot of people talk about this stuff historically, and also when the EU was a big topic, at least in Britain, that was something that was, touted a lot about in the future, where there will no longer be individual states, there will just be the EU, right? Just like how people deem America and how America works. And, in War Thunder, I honestly think that's the way that we go. Just because the game has to constantly expand. They have to continuously add stuff. They have to also, make it more... they have to make it balanced. And you can't keep adding, these separate tech trees, which pretty much offer nothing, right? What would France get? A random, slightly modified Senegalan vehicle? They could easily get Switzerland, which has a metric ton of indigenous stuff and also imported stuff. You could add Spain to them if you really felt like it. And yeah, you have a lot of North African / African variants of stuff. You could even, if you really felt like it, if you really wanted to rustle some feathers, you could add Vietnamese stuff to France because of their, their historical connections to the country. Like, you could even, like, what about like Holland? You could add Holland to France if you really wanted to. You could add all the Benelux stuff that people talk about to France. So Switzerland is somewhat in Germany right now. One vehicle is. Like, there's also Swiss vehicles and other tech trees too. So yeah, like, the thing is, you could do all of these things if you want to. Hey Firestarter, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good today. So yeah, like, you have all of these options. Like, you could... any of them could exist. And it doesn't really matter where things are gonna go. It's just the fact that it will happen. So I don't think it's really a conversation. It's more of a definite thing. And it's just following the themes that we've seen in the past. I don't know why any of it would change or why the ideas would change. It's one of the things that hasn't really been fully talked about when it comes to the War Thunder stuff, because Gaijin doesn't really like talking about it. And I don't blame them, because there is a set of the community who is incredibly aggressive when it comes to this idea of what vehicle should be in what nation and what should support what, and yeah, it's just a bit of a pain, at the end of the day. It's not fun dealing with, and yeah, I get why they try and stay away from the topics. Then we have Naval. Hey Tech, hello. Do you think Gaijin will add spotlights, headlights, formation lights, and other lighting systems for vehicles and structures? No. I mean, the honest answer is yeah, they'll add everything eventually, but the answer also is no. Because why would you? The thing about a lot of these things is they're not standardized. So a lot of the lighting things in the game that we have, like cockpit lighting, they're all standardized, and they're all, it's not like you have like different light sources coming from different parts of the cockpit, for example. It all comes from like the central point. Headlights are just a pain to deal with, because for every vehicle they are in different places. So you have to model them for every single vehicle. So you could do it, the same with the traffic lights as well, or the formation lights. You have to, from the ground up, add it to every vehicle. You've seen how long it's taken them to, do stuff like what do you call it? You've seen how long it's taken them to do stuff like custom loadouts for vehicles, right? Which is basically taking a bunch of old vehicles and trying your best to remodify them to a different level. Or even stuff like, sorting out different, updating different flight models, or even just updating different models, like the PBY5s, right? It took them 11 years to update the B-17, and they only did it because they added Israel into the game. So, yeah, the cost to benefit ratio is not great on stuff like that, because first of all, you would be a maniac to use them in battles, because you're basically just putting a sign on your head saying, hey, shoot me. And then second of all, they would be used in very, very small cinematic settings, and a lot of people who use stuff like that in cinematic settings usually can create the effects anyway, from post effects, right? So yeah, I don't honestly think that stuff like that will be added anytime soon. If I was going to be honest, that stuff like that stinks of community content. Hey, there's the Vacalin, nice. So it stinks of community content. So if people from the community could come together to do it, I think that would be something that would definitely be more interesting than what we see now, which is a situation where, we live in this limbo where there's a bunch of people who want this stuff, and then I put it in the same category as like ship horns, right? Like there's some people who want like naval horns, but does it really make a lot of difference? And will it just lead to, people blinding others? Yeah, probably. Hey Shazin, nice to see you. Like, put it like this, there's always that one donkey every so often who would just blast the horn constantly. And then also there would be some donkey every so often which would just, fire the light source off all the time. And one of the things you got to remember is using light in games can be incredibly griefing. And it would be very hard to detect people doing it. You would have to like do it through like mass reporting and stuff. Like for example, imagine if you are like doing night battles constantly, and there's just a dude on your team who just keeps flashing his lights constantly and showing where your team is. Right? Pain in the ass to deal with. So from an individual's perspective, if once again, as a realism idea, yeah, sounds cool, sounds fun, and they'll probably add it eventually. From an actual gameplay perspective, does it add anything? No. And will it annoy people? Yes. From a cinematic point of view, I mean, yeah, fair enough, it's nice. But at the same time, it's, good for like 2 seconds, and then you go to daytime because, in cinematics, you want people to see stuff. And if you don't believe me, go watch that episode of Game of Thrones where they did the wonderful Army of the Dead versus Winterfell, and how you just can't see anything because it was an artistic choice. Yeah, alright, whatever. Just tell me you didn't want to hire more effects artists, it's all good. What do I think of the chances of a tech tree of the Iberian Union? I have no idea what that is. So, 50%. There's a chance for everything, but I have absolutely no interest in any new tech trees. As a person, as a personal opinion, I don't want to see any more individual tech trees. Spain or Portugal, there is 0 chance of that happening. Sorry, 0.00001% chance of that happening. There is not enough vehicles. Then we have Malt Bjorjesson, or Jessen. What a name. I'm just trying to survive here, so just give me 2 seconds. Hi, Tech. Hi. Given that naval is one of the least played parts of the game, and also adding on the fact how long it took for the French Navy to get added, do you think they will ever see the Chinese and Swedish naval branches? I'm thinking that Gaijins simply do not deem it worth it, given the time and effort it takes to make these tech trees. I mean, a lot of the vehicles you could add specifically for Sweden and China would be just straight up copies of other vehicles you already have in the game, with slight differences to them. I think they probably think there is worthiness of adding all of them into the game just to actually have full on, setups for it, just like how they added helicopters to both of the nations. I think eventually stuff like that will be added, or at least like a few vehicles will turn up for them, which is good. The main issue you have is the way that naval works right now, and the way that naval works right now, and also the way that lineups would work for those nations. It wouldn't really, it doesn't really offer anything, new. So the only thing I can think of is once they finish with adding all of kind of like the mechanics in for naval, which is something they've been working on, like the aircraft carrier stuff, the submarine stuff, the bigger battleship stuff, that kind of opens up more opportunities for these types of nations, especially China, which has a lot of modern naval military stuff. Like if they go whole hog into something like the Chinese, missile destroyers and stuff, it could be really interesting. So it might be just the fact that they're waiting to add in certain mechanics and then they bring in stuff like that. The other thing is that the problem we'll never know is like what is the cost of all these things, and do they actually make money back on them? Like for the French stuff, a lot of the vehicles that they've added now, are copies of other vehicles, or there are very similar ones to other vehicles, but they still need, model differences to them. How much do they see it as kind of like a long-term strategy instead of a short-term? And that's the thing that we will never really know unless they tell us. I think in general, if I was a person who created War Thunder, I would believe that not everything has to be fully profitable and 100% maxed out when it comes to everything in the game. I think it's actually would be nicer if you had more of a balance, because that's kind of the appeal to the game, right? Like you have all of these different areas, and even if an area is only played by 0.5% of people, it's available and it's going to be available for many years. So it's something that will, of course, be positive. So for me, that's how I see it, Honestly, there could be an Iberian Union that would include Portugal, Spain, colonies, vehicles also, but would be a mess. Big mess, wouldn't it? There are not enough vehicles. I will say it once again. There are not enough. I've seen all of the suggestions. There are not enough vehicles. If you compare them to pretty much every other nation in the game, apart from the nations that people don't play, there are not enough vehicles. It would make much more sense if you take those nations and add them to pre-existing tech trees. Stop trying to make independent tech trees because of beliefs of nationalism or beliefs of any other nature. There is no need. That's the other thing as well, yeah, future planning, right? Like maybe in the future something happens where, certain things become a lot more popular than before. Whether it's like something that changes within War Thunder, like, you split up tech trees, which is something they did in Naval, which made, a lot of people come to the game. Whether it is something like another product just dying, there's plenty of things that can happen, right? It's probably not good to team kill people, but you do you. You'll eventually get your account suspended, which won't be very fun for anybody. Right, so then we have Zealots. With rank 8 coming, I wonder if they plan to unfolder all the top tier vehicles that were previously folded to reduce the grind. If they move both the M1A2 and SEP up, they might do it. It's also interesting that Gaijin decided to add rank 8 just when they couldn't add the T90M and other vehicles without foldering another vehicle in its place, or foldering the T90M itself. I was just getting into rank 7 for the USSR and Germany, so I'm pretty annoyed. The reason why they folded all the vehicles is because rank 8 was coming in. You know how I talked about in the summer that a lot of this stuff was already planned before it happened, before like the big kickoff that everybody had? That's this basically. So what ended up happening, what ended up happening was a lot of people got annoyed at the way that the research system worked, right? And what happened is they folded a bunch of vehicles, they moved a bunch of vehicles around, and they halved their research cost, which was all already planned. Because what was also already planned was rank 8 was going to come out at the end of the year. I don't know how many times I have to say that decisions aren't made overnight when it comes to War Thunder. A lot of this stuff, especially on the higher end, is pre-planned for a long time. So all of the changes that you see when it comes to foldering vehicles, when it comes to reducing research, when it comes to all of these things, have already been planned for a long time. And sometimes the actual implementation of it takes a while because there's unforeseen issues. Just like we've seen with the skill kill or the critical things, right, in aviation, where they've had to postpone it. But the idea of it or the thought of it has been around for a long time, right? So that's basically what ends up happening constantly when it comes to War Thunder. So the reason why a lot of those vehicles got folded, the reason why a lot of those research changes came in, is because this time they were being a little bit proactive compared to before, where what they do is they bring in all this stuff and then in like the next 6 months they change all the things. So they just changed around the way that they do that stuff. What that also led to is a lot of the sales being wonky, which is what we've also seen. The anniversary sales should have been a big giveaway for people with what was going to come next, but instead it was just people complaining about things not being on sale. But sometimes you got to sit down and work out why are those things not on sale, and then you would have worked out what exactly was coming in the next stage. So it's just about the whole pre-planning thing. So like, they want the total amount of research for a tech tree to be standard. So even if they add in a new rank, even if they add in a new set of vehicles, they want the total amount of RP that you had to research before to be comparable to the total amount of RP to get to top tier, by the way, that was there previously. This is actually not something which is really discussed ever, but it's why you get a lot of RP reductions over the time, and also why they bring in a lot of the research changes that they do. So now there is an increased amount of RP you need to get in order to get everything unlocked. But also it is easier to get that RP, and at the same time it is easier to get full lineups because of the changes. Hey Chanwitz, nice to see you. Sweet dreams, Penguin Red. So that's why you have all of these systems in place. Once you start seeing like War Thunder or Gaijin like this, everything starts making sense. Instead of thinking of it from a reactive point of view, which is how a lot of the time they actually write it, which is, we've heard you and we've decided to do this. Realize that a bunch of these ideas and a bunch of these thoughts, even if they aren't acted upon, have been at least thought about previously over periods of time. And then when you start lining stuff up and the changes that they make over time, you can easily predict what they're going to do next because they follow the same patterns that they have for years, which is very easy to work out. The only difference that can throw like spanners into the whole thing is if they actually run into something where they screw up. So if they screw up the addition of a mechanic, or if they screw up an addition to the game, that can like throw obviously a blinder into the system. But the vast majority of the time that doesn't happen. So usually things come in, they need to be slightly balanced, but they don't need to be completely screwed with, like drones had to be completely screwed with. So yeah. There's no need to be annoyed, because the amount of research that you need now is comparable to the amount of research you would have needed before. The only difference that's changed is now you have to go through different lines, which generally, at least from my point of view, is fine, because it basically means that, you know, you get a full experience in the game, and also you get bigger lineups, which means that you get more RP and the game is more fun to play. So, you know, that's at least the way that I approach it. Right, so the next one is from Jan Conma. What the? Here we go. Right. Why is it like this? Let's see if I can pick the best points. You mentioned that we've already have enough tech trees in the game, that even the ones we do have are on the way of becoming post-national. I completely agree with both takes, but I'd like to know what your thoughts are regarding a more radical interpretation of that idea. That we already have too many tech trees and the game would benefit a lot if we could combine at least a few of them. My stance is that we should have as many nations as possible in the game, with a few tech trees as possible. That means tech trees and nations are no longer synonyms for the game. I mean, yeah, that would be the perfect scenario. Technically, right now, what would actually be best is if there was only one tech tree in the game, and you get to basically play what you wanted, and if they wanted them, like, you know, if they wanted them separated, then you do it by vehicles you can put in the same lineups. So, yeah, basically that, you know, that's fair. The most radical version of this is when the 10 existing trees are condensed into 4. The nations don't disappear, they just get grouped for 4 supranational trees, but of course less crazy versions are also possible. Yeah, or you just put them all in one tech tree. Like, that's the thing. That's actually the craziest, but sure. How would it work? Why do this? And can it be done without taking away player choice? It doesn't remove any player choice. Here's my take on that. Because nations are a good marketing tool with flags and all, I think nations should be subfolders inside a tech tree, which would be the umbrella folder. Yep. I talked about this idea about 5 years ago. The idea is you take a tech tree like France, for example, and I know you can't see it right now, but the tabs for aviation, blue water, helicopters, army, you just add a tab for a separate nation, and then you just stick it in there. And then you can put it in the nation as well. You don't have to put it as a line in the tech tree. The only issue with that is the actual research of it, which, you know, it would mean you'd have to use those specific vehicles to research it. Example, yep. If you just want to play one or the other, you have the option for it, yep. This allows you to put basically all nations in-game that you could possibly want, even if you have literally single vehicles, because they would always have lineup options. Yeah, or you could just do what they do now, you know, which is probably the better version. Another major benefit is that the tech trees would be very unique and therefore worth grinding. Unique is subjective. Right now we have Shermans and patterns in basically every tree. Condensing the tech trees, you would also have this. You would also, by removing them from said tech trees, create real big issues with lineups. Panthers in 3, and M109s for everybody. But under this system, for example, Hungarian World War II stuff would be the Kingdom of Hungary, or would go into in some continental Europe folder mentioned above. Communist Hungary, however, would have its own flag and placement inside the tech tree for Soviet Warpack vehicles. So if you want to play T-72s, the Roosevelt tree is where you go. To use Iron Harvest terminology, I think that unique flavor would be very appealing in the game. Right now, it feels very diluted. if you decide to go down that route, which is one that many people have talked about in the past, what you end up doing is creating an issue we talked about previously, which is the idea that you now have created a bunch of tech trees that do not have full lineups and also have completely different capabilities. So it will be incredibly hard to balance. Or what would happen is everybody would just play one nation, which is what you see now in naval and also what you see now in aviation, and probably will eventually happen in ground, because people go towards the thing that they think is the best. So balance between them would be a huge issue, which is why if you add similar variants of vehicles to separate tech trees, it basically means that it's much easier to balance against each other. But yeah, I don't understand why you have to limit stuff in this way. If you have the idea that you want everything to be in the same place, or if you want things to be as open as possible, just have one big conglomeration tree. So then you don't have to worry about that stuff, and then you just have red team versus blue team, which, we're kind of getting to anyway. The 4 trees I would envision basically be an Anglo one, US, Britain, and Commonwealth, Taiwan, and Israel. It's not very Anglo. A continental European one, Germany, Italy, France, etc. A war pack / mainland China one, classic. And a wildcard tech tree, with interesting and unique vehicles from various other countries around the world. But the details are not actually that important and can be argued forever. It's more the underlying idea. Yeah, this idea has been suggested many times. So what I would do is I would write this out and get it passed to the developers so they can have a look at it too. There is a few issues with doing all of this, and we've talked about them in the past, and yeah, there's a reason why they've gone down a different route to this, and pretty much as simple as that. If you do something like this at such a radical level without going all the way and just putting everything into the same tech trees, you create basically the same problem that you are dealing with right now, where you have sectioned off everything in a different place compared to what it is now. So you still have the issue of creating lineups. You still have the issue of having separated setups, and what that leads to is not having full lineups, and then people just move to the areas which do have full lineups. So all those nations that you want people to play, you've now sectioned off and nobody touches them. Like, if you put, let's say, the Hungarian stuff or the Italian stuff together with the German stuff and also with the French stuff, nobody uses Italy, Hungary, or France in any of those lineups. Because why would you? All their lower tier vehicles that you would be forcing them to play to be able to grind out their later vehicles are crap. There's a few Toldies which are nice. Italy, the only vehicles which are decent at low tier are the American ones. And maybe the L640. For France, all of them are crap. Low tier Sweden without APDS is crap. But I don't know where you put Sweden. Would you put it in this tech tree? This magical European one? Okay, so once again, nobody touches them. And if you mix USSR and China, and you remove all of the vehicles that aren't Chinese out of the Chinese tech tree, like even stuff like the TE 3485 Guy, which is a Chinese vehicle, then what are you left with? Like, I don't know. How do you even start a tech tree like that? Yeah, and the Taiwanese vehicles, I mean, do you count a CM11 as a Taiwanese vehicle? Because it's an M48 and an M60. So that doesn't exist. Name me an indigenous Taiwanese vehicle that doesn't use any parts from any other nation. Like, that's the thing. So you're still going to have problems where you're going to have millions of variants of stuff. You've just changed where they are. and made them harder to research. But yeah, what I would say is just if you want people to discuss this idea for the millionth time, because I honestly remember suggestions like this from like 5 to 8 to 9 to 10 years ago. Just stick it in the suggestions part of the forum and it'll get passed, because the mechanics part of the forum is incredibly weak right now because of the fact that the only things that are getting passed are terrible suggestions, which are pretty much the same as what we've seen in the past. I don't think there's been a single suggestion over like the last year that is any different from what we've seen before, which is a problem because it shows that people are getting stuck in the circles, which isn't great at the end of the day. Like a lot of the ideas that we talk about in the TEC Talks, or a lot of the things that people bring up, I should have like kept a log of them, because many of them, if not all of them, have been brought up previously. And I probably have like a few videos talking about them. It's the problem with being around for so long. Certain ideas just get burned into your head. Then we have Shin. Gaijin once again showing players what their favorite nation is. Yeah, you know what's really funny? You know what's been really hilarious? The last few updates. I remember when the MiG-29 was on the dev server. I remember how powerful it was. It was pretty good. I remember when the F-16 was on the dev server. I remember how good that was. They had to pretty much artificially nerf the F-16 for the MiG-29 to have a chance in the game. And then when they unartificially nerfed it, America took over. Again. The F-14, when that was released, go and ask people who were playing the MiG-23 how fun that was. Enjoyable it was. And then also at the same time, what happened also was, even with this update, you know, everybody talking about how powerful the T90M was going to be when it first came out because it had a Spall liner. Well, what do we do now? Yeah, I'm not even going to talk about naval. Like, naval is so heavily America focused, it's ridiculous. Like, it's not even funny. But, for example, like, when it comes to, like, the Spall liner stuff, right? They were going to give one thing to that T90 to make it even, like, usable at Haita. They were going to give it one unique mechanic, which it shouldn't have had, by the way, but they were going to give it that to actually give people a reason to play it. Now because of backlash, because of people complaining about the fact that it was going to be the only vehicle at that time to have it, even though they already said they were going to come in the future. Now, because it's been added to a bunch of other vehicles, specifically the Leopards, there is no reason to play anything else with the Leopards now. And people have realized again that Leopards are actually pretty good tanks. And they always have been. So, people always talk about, like, bias towards Russia, right? And how, you know, Russia always gets the kind end of the stick. But if you have a look at a lot of the decisions they've made over the last period of time, what you completely see is the opposite. And whenever there is anything that is even like favoring Russia in any way in the game, you just get these fucking harpies that just never shut up and just constantly talk about it and completely forget that anything else exists. Like, it's just crazy. But as I said, like, the thing is, we deal in kind of the English speaking community. One of the things that's been kind of nice, just in general, like making content and talking to a bunch of different people, there's a ton of communities out there. And one thing you realize is, you know, the same across the board. Every separate community has people who believe in areas of bias or areas of difference, or believe that they're being targeted, or believe that people don't listen to them, or believe that they're being persecuted because of who they are and what they play in a video game. And also, the other thing that you realize is there is a metric ton of people who play a very small part of this game compared to the actual size of the game. And this leads to some very, very one-sided conversations. And Gaijin are a little bit at fault for that, because they made it so it was a lot harder to grind more than one or two nations for individual people. And that meant that so many of the conversations that you will have around so many topics are completely worthless, because you won't find many people who actually play all these different areas of the game. Like, a lot of these areas I haven't touched for like at least a year now. And the basic reason is I got sick of the conversations. And even when, like, I was playing all of the stuff and I was talking about it and, you know, my opinions on it and everything like that, everything would change within a few months. And also people would just turn around and tell me I didn't know what the hell I was talking about anyway. So I was just like, well, fine, whatever. Like, it didn't... I realized none of it mattered to the people who were complaining about it. The only thing that mattered is they got their way, and that's all they cared about. So that's how it goes. Hey, Cat Hunting, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing alright today. Yeah, the Russians have a lot of good vehicles at high tier. That's true. They're very powerful at high tier, or if not top tier. There are also many other tiers where they're completely dogshit, or just worthless. That's the thing. But, once again, people massively focus on the top tier of the game and forget everything else exists, even though the vast majority of people do not play top tier. And also don't remember history. You can ask one right now, Cat Hunting. We can do it. We can do it while also doing the other stuff, you know? So yeah, the conversations around these things are worthless. The best thing you can do is give your opinion on stuff and then just turn off the noise, because it's just a waste of time. Like, if you need even a thought towards these ideas or how worthless they are to discuss, the fact that the last week I had to watch people justify doxing somebody over the fact that they thought he was biased towards what reports for a video game he was passing to the developers compared to others. And saying stuff like, well, what else were they supposed to do? I don't know, not dox a dude over a video game. And then in the same breath, you know, we need to listen to everybody. Everybody's opinion is equal. Everybody's opinion is great. We even did that video like a few months ago where it was just reading out one dude's posts on the forums. He posts like every day, like twice a day, and it is the most mind-numbing stuff that you will ever find. But you're supposed to listen to that guy because he's writing on a forum, you know. It's just nuts. Exclamation mark controls cat hunting. Will give you all of my controls. Graphics, I have everything set to full, apart from tree range and lens flare. So everything's on full. The post FX, you can't see it, but it's all default basically, with Reinhardt used. So that's pretty much it. My dev server things are slightly different to my live server ones, just because the live server one's a little bit easy. Like it's, you know, it's just nuts. But I think it's important for everybody to say their opinion, which is why I think everybody should make, whether it's YouTube videos or posts or whatever. Because even if it is completely worthless, it is at least entertaining. Oh, God. I've had a great amount of enjoyment this year just reading what I would class as mentally ill posts from people who are way too invested into things that do not matter in life. I find it worrying that there are people's personalities which are based around how they are seen in a video game. I find the whole thing just fascinating. And I kind of want to like have some of these people on just to chat to and be like, why is that around? It's Gaijin's fault for the toxic nature of the community. Crap RP games, crap maps, OP vehicles, yada 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 yada. I disagree. I think if that's the case, then I honestly, I've never liked this idea of removing personal responsibility from individuals, and just blaming a monolith, for it. I see it as the same as just blaming God for your shit luck in life. Like, I think it's much more important just to be like, okay, if I feel this way and I'm not vibing with the product, I just won't use it. You know? I've never understood the mentality of blaming others for things that I'm annoyed about. If I get so annoyed at something, I just put it down and then move on, you know? Literally did it with Enlisted recently, you know? Thank you for the Prime subscription, Chanwitz. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. It's very much appreciated. Thank you very much, man. There's always going to be people who are annoyed at whatever decisions are made, so there's no way of pleasing everybody. And I think over at least this last year, you can see that they've made great efforts to make the game better for a lot of people. And I think that should be lauded. I think it's been pretty good. Sweet dreams, Moon. Have a nice rest. Well, that's the other thing, Teddy, as well. Like, every so often they just turn up. It's just how it is. If they have the data, the snow should incentivize use of other less played nations' vehicles. For example, maybe give away free vehicles, historical skins, camos outside of the battle pass. They got rid of this recently with the weeklies. Hopefully we get them back. Yeah, I agree. It would be nice to see stuff like that back. I think it's very good. I mean, the tier extension is completely anti-consumer. But also, at the same time, if they didn't do the tier extension, as we just discussed, the foldering stuff wouldn't exist. The reduction in RP for the folded vehicles wouldn't exist, right? And then also at the same time, you wouldn't have got all of the other changes to research that they brought in. So it's ebb and flow, as it always is with War Thunder. You get certain things which ebb, you know, when putting together these things, and also even these, and, you know, lower tier stuff is too, and then you lose stuff. Like, you know, this vehicle going to rank 2, or, you know, the addition of rank 8. So there are positives and negatives all the time with these. The issue I have with a lot of this stuff is the way that it's seen. People only focus on the negatives. The positives are never talked about. It kind of sucks. I wish it was just a little bit more both ways, you know? What is the tier extension? Just adding high BR vehicles to the end of the trees? No, adding ranks to the end of the trees. They don't usually up the BRs, but no, adding ranks. What a rank does is it means that you have to research a certain amount of vehicles at a rank to be able to progress to the next rank. So whenever they add a new rank, it's basically something that that prevents you, like you have to research different parts of the tree to get to it, right? What's the point of radar when you don't have radar missiles? What do you think radar was used before radar missiles existed? It also makes your previous premiums or talisman vehicles useless to get you to spend more? Yeah, definitely. It also makes some of them more useful. Like, for example, the stuff like the terms, right? The terms used to be rank 6. The Leopard 2A4 also, this one used to be rank 6. So once again, ebb and flow. Some people benefit, some people lose. It sucks. I would love to live in a world where everybody is able to win, and everybody is able to have a great time. But there has to be balance to the fourth. Oh, God. Yeah, radars are not just used for missiles. They're used for, you know, seeing where people are. It's usually the point of them. And radars are kind of useless. I mean, you can tell that to ground vehicles that kind of rely on them without missiles. But I mean, a lot of the World War II radars are pretty bad. They're useful in certain situations, but mainly others, no, they're not. Some of them are okay though. Then we have Jerry. I feel like Gaijin is going to do something with mines next year for ground, since most of the new rank 8 MBTs have received mine protection. I mean, they might do, but it would be once again another one of these things, which is really is a mechanic literally only for like rank 8 or rank 7. I think it's more the fact that they just want to give a selling point to these vehicles, because all of the selling points all of the selling points for the vehicles, like if you have a look at like the ones they just added in at rank 8, it's like, do they have more armor? I mean, compared to the standards which we already had, no. Like even the Spall liners were given to a bunch of vehicles that already existed. So that mechanic could have easily been added without them. The 2A7V, I mean, is it more armor? Not really. It's actually less than the 122s. The T90M has more armor? Nah. It's basically the same profile as what you've seen on the T80 BVM, just has a Spall liner, which, once again, is in a lot of other stuff. Challenger 3 more armor? Nah, not really. More powerful engine? Nah, Challenger E has that actually. More powerful gun? Yeah, definitely. But if you actually have a think about what have these new MBTs brought in, they've kind of just focused what are good on other MBTs and stuck them on the new ones. Apart from the T90, which loses out in certain areas. But they also all lose out in others because they're all heavier, so they're slower. So they have basically the same armor profiles. Some of them have enhanced firepower, but not many. Hey, Madam Marcy, nice to see you. And others are, I mean, they have better, like, optics. I mean, that's, like, one of the big ones at the end of the day. So, to me right now, it's just, like, a selling point. It's like, hey, here's some additional armor on the ground. You know, it'll help you against, you know, as Redned said, like, artillery, or it'll help you against, like, bombs or rockets and stuff like that. Stuff, like, coming up off the ground, you know, it'll be a bit better on. So that's nice, but like it's for me right now it's just a selling point. And if they if they added mines to the top tier of the game, can you imagine how annoying that would be? Like in Naval, it's not too bad. They did just add an automatic system in for mines for Naval. So, you know, it's easier to move them about. But can you imagine how annoying it would be to just drive around the place and then you just smash into a mine? 287 does have more armor, just in the hull. The 122 has more armor than it. So then it's just another mechanic which is just annoying. That prevents you from playing, you know, what would be classed as a nice way. And now you have to completely always look at where you're going instead of focusing on what might be shooting you. And then also at the same time, like, you could just randomly pop from something like that. That's akin to that whole, like, you know, let's add in AI soldiers to sit around the place with RPGs. How about we don't? And yeah, they could easily add that stuff, but I don't know what would carry it, which would obviously be something, because, you know, most vehicles don't just wander around with mines attached to them. And then also, is it beneficial to gameplay? No, definitely not. Definitely not. Thank you for the raid, your badge. That's very kind of you, man. Hopefully you had a good stream. Hopefully everything went well. Hey, 996, 997, 991. Nice to see you, man. Hopefully you're doing good. So yeah, could they add it? Yes. Have they added mechanics in the past which are annoying as all hell? Yes. Should they? Probably not. You know, and I think right now it's just more of a selling point, you know. I'm doing good, 996, just very fatigued, but not doing too badly. Yeah, I suppose artillery mines. Another very annoying thing that they could add. But yeah, definitely possible. I feel like sometimes when we have discussions about War Thunder, people honestly treat it like a single player RTS. Like, oh, well, what if you could do this? What if you could do that? You know that there's like people on the other end, right? Like they also have to play too. It reminds me of whenever people bring up like Battle Station Specific, right? Or, you know, those types of games. It's like, yeah, they were pretty fun. They're also single player RTSs with, like, you know, once again, single player elements. You got to remember, like, you're not just facing bots all the time. Even in Naval, there's some real players, you know? Like, there's quite a lot of them, like, in this match. This match is full, apart from, like, one person. So, yeah. Dried banana chips. Dried banana chips are really nice. Dried mango is also really nice. But it's mainly because they dry them in sugar, so they're pretty sweet. Pretty good. But yeah, so a lot of these things, like, sound great if you're in the mindset of you being like an armchair general, but the moment you try and think about, like, well, what happens when we add other players to the mix? Well, you run into the imp scenario, you know, where it's either very beneficial for you and annoys the enemy, or annoys you and is very beneficial for the enemy. And I really don't like that. I think I've talked about the imp scenario before. It's something that Reynard brought up about Hearthstone. If you don't know, Reynard is an old streamer. Don't know if he still does it. He created Tempo Storm, which was an esports org, and overall had some pretty good success. I don't know what he does now. I think he was developing a video game at some point. But one of the things he mentioned is when you're trying to create a card game, one of the things you don't want is a coin flip, and the coin flip to annoy your opponent and make you feel good, and then, you know, the opposite way around as well. And the example of really bad card design, which he brought up, was a card in Hearthstone called Imp Master. So what Imp Master did was it did 2 to 4 damage, and also spawned the amount of imps that you did with that damage. So if you did 3 damage, you got 3 imps on your side, which were 1/1s. So in certain scenarios, you would do 4 damage to whatever you would do damage to, and also get 4 imps.
super powerful, right? But then in other scenarios, you would only do 2 damage and only get 2 imps. So the amount of RNG that is involved in that, and the amount of swing that's involved in that, is incredibly annoying, not just to play with, but to play against. And if you add more of these elements into War Thunder, which would be these swing elements, which you see already a lot at high tiers, it just becomes so annoying to play. And mines are a perfect example of that. They're a completely RNG thing, where no matter how much you add them in, there's no way that you can play around it, right? In Naval, it's not too bad, because a lot of the time in Naval, like, you have to get to the power positions to be able to like plump down them and be useful. In ground, it would be super easy to do because the maps are a lot smaller, and also there are a lot more tighter areas where people go to. So yeah, I don't think it would be very fun. RNG generally is pretty bad, but also in terms of RNG, there is worse RNG than other RNG. Does that make sense? So certain RNG, really bad. Other RNG, not so bad. So, yeah. The only way you could meaningfully add mines is if you added infantry in the game or certain artillery systems, both of which won't be good. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So I think right now it's just kind of a way of adding additional armor and making it sound good. But then again, who knows? You know, ground in general, like in terms of mechanics, you know, they're kind of running out. When you think about what mechanics could be added for ground, I mean, there's not a crazy amount, is there? Like, there's not a crazy amount of mechanics that they can really toss in. They talked about they were going to be looking at changing FCSs, which that could be really dangerous for the game. You know, if they decide to add in like automated systems, like automated laser rangefinders, automated, you know, seek and destroy stuff. Like, they gotta be real careful with that. Real careful with that. Because you already have a situation where the high tiers of the game are very, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on. If you start adding stuff like that in, it could be a real pain to a lot of people. So, gotta be super careful on that. Hopefully there will be. So then we have MJ. Tech dude, how are you? I've been playing more Naval lately, and I really hope more Naval squadron vehicles can get added to the game. What's your opinion? Yeah, I mean, I'm down for more squadron vehicles overall. You know, whether they're aviation, whether they're ground or naval. It'd be kind of cool to see helicopter ones. I think we've seen one, haven't we? The YAH, the YAH-64. But no, I'd be down. Like, I think it's nice to have these squadron vehicles. I wish, if I'm honest with you, when it comes to Naval and how it works, the only thing that kind of annoys me about Naval right now is the bloody rewards they keep doing for stuff. Like, the coastal rewards are fine for the battle passes. I think overall they're pretty good. Hey, Pelehonen, nice to see you. But the bloody, what do you call them? The event rewards for stuff are terrible. Like, the Mississippi is a really cool vehicle, right? It's got a ton of armament, ton of fun, should be enjoyable. But if you're a person trying to get into Naval, do you want to play the Mississippi? Like, is that really... Like, wouldn't it be so much better if you could get, like, a rank 3 premium destroyer? So then you could use it to be able to grind out different elements? Because, like, the Mississippi is, you know, it's fun. But as an event vehicle, it means that it's only available for a small amount of time, unless you get it off the market. And also, its usability for a player who, let's say, wants to grind out the tech tree is pretty worthless, you know. Like, it's kind of nuts. So hopefully they decide to kind of change how that's all set up, because otherwise there's going to be a bit of a problem. But yeah, of course I'd like more vehicles. More vehicles in the game for Naval, more vehicles for everything. You know, I've been enjoying the French stuff quite a lot. I think it's been quite fun to do. And yeah, I bring on whatever they bring next, I suppose, which will be quite nice. So we have Aldo Carulli. Hello Tech, once again thank you for the Tech Talks. During the duration of this one, I managed to grind the entirety of the F-15, and I'm looking forward to the next one to get through the SU-27. God damn! Jesus. You are grinding up a storm, which kind of shows how quickly these things can happen, but that is nuts. You are grinding at a level which is way ahead of where I am right now. I'm bumbling along, just kind of relaxing and shooting things. Would you consider the sound of the guns on this ship to be the Colbert Report? God damn, Club Blank. Stephen Colbert, or whatever he's called, that guy, he seemed a bit of fun. I never watched any of his stuff, but, you know. This idea of, like, entertainment news is a very odd mix. But I think it's kind of like the new age stuff. It's pretty interesting. Let's see. This aside, I'll hit you with a very broad question. In what areas is the game, in your opinion, going to expand greatly in 2024? I feel like the second half of 2023 was huge, and I hope to see the same commitment in the future. Have a great day and keep up the good work. Hey Dap Chief, nice to see you, man. I'm gonna do my predictions and hopes videos at the end of the year, as we always do. Been thinking about it the last few weeks. I mean, the two areas of the game that really still have a lot of growth to do is obviously naval and airplanes. Helicopters, there really ain't a lot. You know, we've talked about it in the past. Helicopters, they're not maxed out. Like, they can still add a lot of systems and stuff. But when you actually think about what they could add and what's about the place, there ain't a lot. Like, there ain't a ton. So, aviation in the form of airplanes and naval is like the two huge growth areas for War Thunder. I honestly think that looking at naval, you know, you obviously have stuff like submarines turning up, aircraft carriers being talked about. There's also a ton of machines they can add to naval still, like a ridiculous amount. For airplanes, obviously you've got missiles, you know, anti-radiation stuff. Now that they're adding in different things to the game, which actually focus around that. You know, we talked about like the AI stuff that they're going to bring in. A lot more like SAM systems and things like that. There is no way that those come in, and you also don't have the anti-radiation stuff, because it looks like they want to try and make it so, you know, more vehicles have access to grinding out stuff a bit easier, and one of those ways is obviously through using those types of munitions. Think we'll get an expansion of obviously rank 8 for aviation. That's the big area right now. And at the same time, I think it might be time for ECMs finally. They're at a point where they've expanded radar systems a lot. They've also expanded RWR systems a lot. Those two were the big stumbling blocks when it came to ECMs. And we have started to see stuff like IRCMs bringing into the game for air vehicles. You know, for the F-111, SU-25, SU-39. I think one of those guys has it. So I feel like that's going to be something that they expand and work on with different ones. I think the pods as well. You know, they've been working on a lot of pod stuff more recently, so I don't see why that would be any different. But yeah, I'll do my predictions video, probably not next week, but the weekend after. Usually my predictions are not too bad. I think in general we're pretty much slap bang on a lot of the time. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to come. A lot of areas of the game to kind of maneuver around and have a good time with. And hopefully, you know, people enjoy it. Next year, I'm going to be shifting my focus on how I play the game. We're going to go back to more spading stuff and kind of just chilling through that. The Battle Pass grind this year has been not too bad, but at the same time, it's been pretty dull. I think is the way to put it. Like I've kind of got bored of playing a lot of the time when playing War Thunder, but I think going and doing more experiences and having a bit more fun with that will be the way forward. Kind of like how when the M109s came out, I actually really enjoyed playing a bunch of the M109s, just because of it being different and being something which was quite nice to focus on. So I hope we can do that going into the new year with a bunch of new stuff. There's a lot of things that were added this year that I just haven't touched yet, so a lot of things to cover and a lot of things to have fun with. So should overall be very positive and very nice. I will keep up the good work. We'll continue. No breaks. Let's see. Opinion on the Pepsi Max ad? Which one? Pepsi Max. I haven't seen any of the ads because I haven't watched Twitch for like a week. One of the problems with doing like all the content stuff, it means that I'm kind of behind on looking at everything else. I kind of like keeping up with that stuff, find it fun. But unfortunate. Hello again, Tech. Sorry for the second comment, third if you count the timestamps. I like that Gaijin has better communication now. However, I think that the game should still get more research reductions throughout all the trees. I feel like if it didn't take years for a free-to-play account to reach top tier, people would be playing multiple nations, even if top tier shouldn't be the goal. Let's just do this first. I have been playing since 2018 and I've reached rank 6 in one nation, rank 4 in 4 nations, rank 3 in 3 nations, rank 2 in 1 nation. I mostly play ground, and I feel that even if I've taken some large breaks from the game, I should be higher. However, I'd like to say that I haven't been playing lately because my PC can't run War Thunder well, so I haven't worked very much skill. The RP booster mechanic, what do you think? It's an interesting conversation to have in terms of what is fair or what is right in terms of, grinding out stuff. So, for a long time, at least for me, when I think about War Thunder and I think about the general grind of the event of the game, I've pretty much been okay with it. But also at the same time, I am a person who goes a little bit nuts when it comes to grinding out the game. So my level of what I expect compared to others is probably not a good idea to base stuff off of, because I expect a lot less than I think many other people do. I expect games like this to have a decently sized grind. I expect games like this to not be simple to get everything through, because after doing a ton of reading, not just necessarily on War Thunder, but also a lot of games around it, there are some elements that don't get talked about which are very important. If you make stuff too easy to grind, what ends up is people will just leave. And it's something that they've tried to bring up a few times in different ways, the Gaijin team, but they bring it up in very silly ways a lot of the time, and it never sticks because there's a completely different mentality on how all of these things work, depending on what region of the world you are from. So that's why the idea of entitlement comes out a lot, and why when people talk about it, there's a little bit of a difference in how people see this stuff, and it can be like walking on eggshells. So you need the game to have some grind in it. You can't have the game to not have any grind in it, and everybody has completely different opinions on what that level should be. So you have this situation where you can look at the stats and how much people are playing, and also you can have a look at what is also available in other areas and what other games are doing and try and focus around that. Like, for example, the test drive stuff, right? From an individual point of view, it makes complete sense that every vehicle should be test driven. You should be able to test drive everything in the game. From a company point of view, it's a terrible idea, because you will literally just have people come into the game and test drive a bunch of vehicles from the high echelons of the game or from any of the echelons of the game, and then they just won't play the game. And I know a lot of people think that's stupid, but there's data backing it up that there are sets of people out there who do just want to do that. And the idea is if you give everybody access to everything in that way, then you lose a percentage of people who do just want to play the game. Or sorry, who would generally not play the game if you gave them that access to those vehicles. It's the same as the dev server stuff, right? In the dev server, if you gave everybody access to everything, you won't have any battles on the dev server. And you won't be able to test out a lot of the scenarios that you want to test out because everybody instead would be gawking at the vehicles in custom battles or gawking at them in general places outside of the standard realm where you generally test stuff. And understand they're not trying to test like the feasibility of the vehicle, like how useful it is. They're trying to test what bugs are on the vehicle and how to fix them. And sometimes that can only be done in live server testing or dev server PvP. And that's why they don't give people access to everything. It's not because they're being mean. It's not because they want, people to, be indentured to grind these things out. It is honestly because in those environments, you have sets of time where you need to work out what's going on in the maps. You get to test the new maps and work out if they work or if there are bugs or if anything's wrong with them, right? Hey, Karma, nice to see you. So it's all just about that. But once again, if you explain this to people, they get annoyed at you because it gets labeled as anti-consumer, and you should always be for the people and against whatever force people want you to be against, because that's who they've decided is the boogeyman. It's why talking about even general business practices with people and how stuff works and how, businesses function is pretty much impossible. It's like it is literally like talking to people about standard basic, ideas of demand and supply in microeconomics. It's like it isn't you either get it or you're not. It's more you either just it's either you like sit there and understand that both sides have to be, at a level where they're both benefiting up to a certain point, or you decide that one side should not benefit at all and just decide that their factors shouldn't be taken into account. And whenever that's done, it's first of all an incredibly selfish thing to do because nothing works like that. And then it just means you are focusing only on you and not even the people around you. And then secondly, it's a misunderstanding that if that part doesn't exist, if that business part doesn't exist, you don't even get 1% of the thing that you enjoy. It just doesn't exist because they wouldn't be able to function. It's a really, really hard conversation to have. And it's one that for a long time, I've just been sat here trying to have with people. And as the community in War Thunder has matured over the years, it has actually been easier to do. Because I think more people have actually, I don't know how else to put it, but experienced the real world and or maybe just have more information about how standard businesses work and why, certain decisions are taken. I don't know. But something did change and, people I think are a little bit more sympathetic to things nowadays. So at least that's positive. Alright, so then we have Connor Abrams. Hey Tech, hello. just a quick question. When it comes down to modeling of classified armor ammo, blah blah blah, do you think Gaijin's doing a good job? Clearly they don't have the classified information and everything is guesswork. Another bit to this is, do you think they're selective about what they add, and maybe a bit biased to certain trees for this classified material? After seeing the sheer difference between the T90M and the M1A27V2 as of the 10th of December, it's my personal opinion that they're somewhat biased towards Russia in this particular case. Anyways, keep up the good work. Fair enough. I think it's important to remember that other nations exist. So, as of the 15th of December, I think we could easily make the argument that Gaijin is biased towards Germany. And they have given Germany the best top tier MBT, along with bias towards Sweden, which also were very powerful on the dev server anyway. I think they do have probably better connections in certain countries than others when it comes to being able to deal with data. And also at the same time, there are just countries and companies which are easier to deal with overall when it comes to these types of things than others. Other nations are just better at record keeping. So, for example, let's talk about Japan, right? So Japan, Sweden didn't get a new airframe for 2 years. They only had the most dominating tank for like 4, but yeah, sure. That's the big thing. But the interesting thing about Japan is during the Second World War and after the Second World War, they straight up burnt a metric ton of their documents. So a lot of the information that you have about Japanese vehicles at the end of the Second World War is from some Japanese sources, but also is from when a lot of stuff was captured and were tested by the Americans and also by the British and by many others. So it isn't just a case of, just because if you only relied on Japanese sources, well, you can't, because they don't exist, because the decision was made to burn everything because they didn't want to be implicated in a bunch of different stuff, and they didn't want to give what they saw as an inferior set of people access to their technology, which is hilarious when you think about it. So basically, what ended up happening is that. And there's been a few cases of that. We talked about the Chinese one earlier. We talked about a bunch of other things. And yeah, I think there are elements when it comes to dealing with data where from the outset there will be areas of bias involved because of the fact that whenever you're dealing with nations, you are going to have a bunch of biases, and when you're dealing with humans, you're going to too. The problem is, what if I told you a bunch of people making these decisions aren't Russian? What if you dangle that thought out there? What if it's true that the vast majority of people who are making these decisions about the vehicles you bring into the game are not Russian? What happens then? Does the worldview change? Or does it just stay the same? Is it a nationality bias thing that people think it is? I've seen people bring up the law thing, which is hilarious. That good old, depiction law. Always enjoy that one being bandied around. Thank you for the Prime subscription, Alex. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. It's very much appreciated. Thank you very much. And then, what about all of the areas where nations are lacking? I don't know. It's a conversation that sucks because, especially if you focus on the top tier of the game, there is always going to be narratives around what is the best thing in the game. There's always going to be the truth of what is the best in the game as well. And no matter what situation you get into, as long as the game isn't a symmetrical game, where everybody gets the same stuff on the same map layouts, which are symmetrical, and have the same amount of points, same amount of crew skills, all of that stuff, right? All of that stuff. Then of course you are going to have claims of bias and also elements of it, wherever it comes from in each tier. So, is it as simple as this nation is favored over this one? No, because you can just give examples of where that hasn't been the case and just kind of move on. But the major issue, that's a very hard discussion topic to have, is how do all of these factors influence everything that's going on, and how, as an individual, do you kind of sit down and work out all the stuff that's happening? That's really tough. And also, you're basically doing it with about 5 to 10% of the information that exists, which is even harder. You know. Well, that's the thing, Red Ned, right? Like, that's the other thing. It's very hard to have these conversations. You know, the F-16 conversation. The, even stuff like the Eugenie conversation. The high tier, you know, German / USSR coastal conversation, where Germany literally has the best of both worlds, top tier coastal. Starter helicopters, with Germany and Britain getting the best ones compared to stuff like the Mi-4 and the H-1G. Like, there's so many different things to point towards which just break the narrative stuff. So the main thing you have to work out in your head is, why do those exist? Who are even the people making the decisions? And why are they making those decisions like that? And that's hard, you know? That's a hard thing to do. But yeah, the way that I think they're dealing with the classified armor stuff, I mean, with that blog post they made on the Abrams and the Challenger, I think they laid down pretty well how they're doing all this stuff. I don't think they're going too far. I don't think they're going far enough, though. I honestly think what they should do with armor values at high tier is exactly what they did with stuff like reloads. So obviously the engine stuff is pretty consistent. You know, there's a lot of sources on what engines things have and all of that stuff, right? Same with like the transmissions and how they work and stuff. So for me, what they should do is they should actually balance armor like they do reload and also ammunition. So just do like, if a vehicle is massively overperforming, just change its armor values and cut them in half or something. I think that would actually be super beneficial to the game. People wouldn't like it, because once again, you're screwing with the vehicles that are the best, and maybe you can buff the vehicles that are the worst through armor values. But I honestly don't think it should, armor values specifically, they should listen to any sources based on it. They should, because they don't for ammunition, and they don't for stuff like reload or anything like that. So just make it completely fictional, so you can deal with that percentage of the community who want everything to be historical. And because you have like this kind of like pseudo double standard going on, they're never going to shut up. And just from a personal point of view, I'm sick of hearing them. It is actually draining, just from a personal point of view, to hear all of it, because it's something that every day I get DMs about, every day I see YouTube comments about, every day there's just this new person who's just appeared, who's decided that they're a messiah and they know the true armor values of stuff, and then when you ask them, they bring up some just dumbass shit that makes absolutely no sense and isn't actually armor values. It's just what they've read that somebody else has said, and it's just physically and mentally draining from at least my point of view. And there's no way of shutting it off either, because there is no truth to it. There is nothing you can point towards and go, okay, this is the reality. This is the truth. It doesn't exist right now in the world. And it won't exist for a very long time. And by that point, there'll be other vehicles in the game which people will be debating. So it's very hard for me right now to deal with. It has been for a long time. That's why I'm always glad when they focus on other parts of the game instead of high tier MBTs, because those conversations get a lot smaller. But whenever they decide to add in new MBTs, all these people come out the woodwork and just keep saying dumb shit. Just like whenever they add a new independent nation, you get like this crowd of people who just turn up and go, well, what about this? 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 And I'm just sat there and I'm supposed to just like sponge it all up. And you just can't. Like eventually you get to a point where you just say something snarky or you say something just to shut them up. And then that gets clipped, or that gets thrown around the place, and then you just get a bunch of other people go, oh, look what an arsehole this guy is, and look what he's saying and how bad this is, and then it just keeps like rolling, and it's just shit, which is why I just prefer not to do it. It's easily the worst part of doing all of these things. Conversations in general when it comes to War Thunder are pretty fun. Whether it's like what new vehicles people want to see, what new mechanics they want to see, the past to developers stuff, all of that is really interesting. But the conversations around high tier armor or high tier munitions for ground vehicles or air vehicles is one of the most dullest conversations you can have, because it's not even a discussion. It's this person thinks they know what is true, and then you have this other person who doubts what is true. And then you have the same conversations over and over and over and over again until, someone else gets involved who thinks they know the true, and then it just keeps going. It's mind-numbing, especially if you're in the center of it. Now imagine if you're in the center of about 1,000 conversations that are like that. That's basically where I'm at. And that's why my brain, when it comes to a lot of these topics, is fried. Hey Matrix, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. Like, it's just straight fried. I don't know how else to put it. It was fried like years ago, and now you're dealing with like an ebb of these things at the end of the day. Well done, Norwegian. Keep it up, man. You're doing great. But do I think they're doing like a good job modeling stuff? Yeah, people seem to be enjoying it. Like, I just think they'll go a little bit harder on the balance side of things. So we have Mikazoid. With the addition of the VT4A, do you expect this will be open the floodgates for Gaijin to add other Chinese exports? Yeah, I think. like, China's one of the largest exporters in the world. And I know the memes around like copy-paste stuff and everything, but they do have a lot of AFV, IFV things, SPHs, like all of this stuff that they can add. So, the MBT 2000 or 3000, whichever one they added, that one was the signal of, okay, here they come. Hey Shazin, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing all right. Happy Friday. So yeah, it'll be really nice to see all that stuff. It's an area of the game where they can actually evolve, because one of the problems when you have a look at that part of the tech tree, like the Taiwanese part of the tech tree, which I'm surprised nobody's complained about yet. Like, you guys are behind. What you need to do is you need to start complaining about the fact that they're putting all the export vehicles in the Taiwanese part of the tech tree. How come nobody's complained about that? I thought that was the true China. So why are they putting all of the foreign vehicles inside of it? Come on, get going. Like, God, you guys need to get sorted on this. So the simple thing is, yeah, they're gonna add a bunch of stuff to other things, right? And just like how they've added a bunch of exports to other stuff, they'll add it to China. China is a growth nation. There's a ton of it in War Thunder. There'll be a ton more of it going forward. So if you want some fun stuff, play China. A ton of people play China. I tell you what, one of the fun things about China is going to go read their forums on stuff like Bilibili, for example. Well worth it reading. It's a lot of fun, and you'll learn a lot of good quotes and mottos and stuff. Do I prefer the AD or the AM planes? I prefer the AM plane for for air battles. I prefer the AD for ground battles. That's pretty much how it works. Yeah, the Chinese forums on the Chinese posts on the English forums are great as well. They're just fun to read, you know. Britain is a much safer nation, toenail, compared to France. If you want to grind ground, I would go for France. If you want to grind anything else, I'd go for Britain. But both are good in their own ways. It's just there can be a bit of frustration with France. You're surprised they haven't added the Mirage 2000 for Taiwan. I think it's more because they're adding indigenous vehicles first, and then going from there. And we have RT Eden. Hi Tech, this is not really a War Thunder related question, but I'm curious nonetheless. Do you plan on uploading your podcast on other platforms than YouTube, FE Spotify, and so on? I mean, no, is probably the way to put it. The issue is monetization on those platforms, and also having to pay membership fees. So once again, because this doesn't really make any money, like I'll give you an example. Obviously the Twitch stuff, if I add that in, that's probably a little bit more. But just as like a thing, I'll have a look at my analytics for the last tech talk we did, right? Which was, so I think it was 4 hours, wasn't it? Because it's been a week, so I can see the analytics on it now. So last, the one that we're looking at questions for right now. So the revenue, which was on that, so 3 hours and 26 minutes, was 11 Canadian dollars. So that is what? 11 divided by 3.5. That's what, nearly 3, I think. So that's $3 an hour. I'll do a proper calculation. How about that? So 11 divided by 3.5 divided by 3.5 is $3.14. And then let's be conservative and take, let's say, the cut that YouTube takes and also my tax cut. So let's say that let's just be kind because, obviously tax brackets and things. Let's say 40% of that is lost because I'm not an American person. So for that 3 hours and 20 minutes on YouTube, I made $1.26 Canadian. So that's less than $1 American. Now, one of the things that a lot of these other places have, so for example, Spotify, in order to upload stuff, which is longer than a certain thing, you need to have a membership with them. And what this means is, and also to get over a higher quality, you need to, pay money. That's something I looked into when it came to SoundCloud and also when it came to Spotify. Now, I will say this was a long time ago, so this could have changed, but it was about $20, $25, $30 a month, right? So if I decided to do that with a bunch of different areas and put it and upload it to different places, you're talking like $100 at least a month to put it on these platforms, and it makes absolutely no return in revenue. And the place where it does make a return on revenue, it's making $1.25, right? So And I understand, the whole spend money to make money thing, like the planning for future growth kind of stuff. But since for me, I don't see any growth from those areas. If there was a way of doing it so it wasn't, it didn't cost anything to do, then maybe there's a chance there. And in January, there are certain things that we're gonna do to make the other platform stuff that we usually do a little bit easier, and mean that we can kind of do more stuff together in different places, whether it be like the dual stream stuff or whether it be things like that. But I'm at a point in my life that I feel like a lot of other people are at too. And the way that a lot of economical factors are running right now is I cannot just burn money because it may benefit a very, very small amount of people. You know, I have to think of the family stuff. I have to think about how I'm going to approach, the economy not improving compared to what it has been over, some previous years. I have to think about all of these factors, and throwing money basically down a drain with nothing to really speak of or get back from it is not something that's feasible. I already spend a lot of time doing a lot of stuff which doesn't necessarily pay off as much as it could be, in different areas. Like, for example, all of the stuff I do all of the stuff I do online, like even over this period of time where I've been working pretty much tooth and nail, like the last 3 or 4 months, has the benefit been there? Yeah. Like over this period, we've made a decent amount more money than we did last year, which is really nice, and I'm very thankful for that. But at the same time, it still isn't even minimum wage for the amount of hours I'm putting in. It's basically about like 30 to 40% of minimum wage in my area before tax. So after all this stuff, it still isn't there. Now, does that mean I'm going to stop doing any of the stuff I do? Nah, not at all. Because this is not a money-making venture in that way. And the more money that is made from it means the more money that I can put into different areas. Like, we've done a lot of giveaways so far this year, when it comes to different areas, like when it comes to the Discord and the Tech Hub. Sorry, the not the Tech Hub, but the stream and stuff. We've given away a lot of stuff, which has been really nice, and had a ton of really fun experiences, which has been good. But yeah, the idea of expanding it to different areas is not one which is fully feasible right now. I'm taking a chance in January to basically get a lot of the stuff rolling, which wasn't rolling before. Again, so stuff such as, sorry, a lot of the auxiliary stuff. So, like I said, like TikTok and things like that. Like, we're gonna get all that stuff rolling again when I have more time to deal with it. But I can't justify doing that stuff unless, as I said, it's something that I can do from a point of view where I can do it for free to start with, or at least a trial basis, and then see what happens with it, or even if I can get a sponsorship for it, which is something that just wouldn't exist, I don't think, at this level, but it's at least something to think about. So, yeah. Well, one thing I think what I'm gonna do in the future, with a lot of like these types of things, is we're gonna go through the financial side of it. A lot of people don't like talking about the financial side of it, especially if they're American, because Americans in who are in like the content side of things, because pretty much everything is based in America. They don't have to pay additional fees on top of what they earn. So a lot of them, especially in like the economic areas of stuff like YouTube, make a metric ton of good CPM and things like that. But that doesn't exist for people outside of America. So basically, you can right click, zoom in and zoom out Norwegian. So it's something which, you know, we'll talk about going forward. We'll talk about the feasibility of things. Like, you can set up this if you want, right here, Norwegian. We'll talk about the feasibility of expanding certain things, how much certain things cost to even just set up, and then go from there. Because I think it's important to do, right? Because I know one of the things that, you know, many people have talked about is the idea of adding different stuff, or, you know, doing cinematic stuff, or trying a bunch of different things. And it's like, yeah, but once again, money and time, right? Money and time is very important right now. Yeah, you can increase the mouse wheel multiplier too. That's another thing. So am I against it? No. Is it economically feasible? No. So if it becomes it, sure. But it ain't. So if anything, it's once again, it's, oh my fucking god. High tech, RRB has turned into complete trash. Fair enough. I'm not going to read the rest. It's too much. Please condense your thoughts. But yeah, I think in general, it's something that we'll go into more in the future. So we have galactic threat question for the next tech talk. Okay. Hey Tech, been watching since 2018. I played War Thunder since Royal Armor, and despite starting with ground and basically doing a bit of everything for the following 4 years, it was after the early summer update, around when the player strikes were occurring, that I really started playing a bit more. Decided to focus more on Japan and got top tier naval and rank 7 ground unlocked within 2 months. The grind wasn't bad. In fact, I enjoyed every vehicle and ended up spading them all, minus the Type 60 ATM. I hated that thing. I mean, that's fair. Honestly, the T2 F1, F104J are some of my favorite aircraft now, and I flex my 67% win rate in the 3 when people complain about no flares. I actually really enjoyed the T2 too, but I haven't played it recently. The F1 I really struggled with a lot of the time. That is a tough one to play on stream. Okay. Anyway, to the real question. Why is there a P-47D with a Mexican 201st Fighter Squadron paint job on the loading screen? Was it supposed to come in the game? I can find no official skin or trace of it, otherwise except for the FAM roundel. Do you think we should get a Mexican F5E or the Mexican P-47 as a squadron premium event vehicle? They have some interesting tanks they can give to the American tree, but the thing that makes my friend angry beyond belief is that the US tree could technically get an Mi-8 HIP, or maybe even the Mi-17, and French Super Cougar, along with the AML-90 and the modernized M8 Greyhounds with the 20s. I'm not daft enough to want a tech tree, just a promise fulfilled. Thoughts? Might be a user skin. I don't know. Might be a user skin that turned up, or maybe there was plans for it, or maybe they just decided that it might just be a camo for a random vehicle. There's also, like, I don't know if they ever corrected it, but there was a lot of loading screens back in the day which just depicted stuff that was wrong in the game. Because, of course, the arts team and the design team are two different things. The other thing as well is there was a lot of vehicles that changed over time that were very different to when they were added to the game. So, like, for example, the afterburners on, you know, Sabres and MiG-15s and stuff like that. If you didn't know, back in the day, every jet used to have a flame coming out the back of its exhaust, which is really funny to think about, because obviously that's not how it would be in real life. But it's something that, you know, existed and at the same time was changed. The loading screens were one of those things that it took a while to actually fix and get sorted, but eventually it was, which was good. But yeah, it just took a while to do. So it might have been that there was a plan to go forward with, and then it just never happened. I do honestly think Mexico should be one of those nations that's represented more. Mexico is a very, like, I started looking into Mexico a few years ago. I don't know if you remember that time, but maybe it was because I was just in Canada. There was just like a bunch of time in Canadian news where they just kept talking about wells in Mexico, where there was just a bunch of people that just kept turning up in wells. And like they would uncover a well, and there was like, there was like 20, 30 people in this well. And it just turned out that, some cartel had been using it to dump bodies. And for some reason, that was just a hot news item. So I started looking into the country. So I was like, why do people keep turning up in wells? And yeah, it turns out it's a pretty big place. There's a lot of people, and there's a lot of video games and stuff that have been coming more from that region, and also more South America, which has been really cool. Hey, Alex, nice to see you, man. So, I would hope that that would be an area of the world which would be, talked about more when it came to stuff in War Thunder. I feel like events, squadron vehicles, stuff like that, could really come from that area. And yeah, I think you're right about the idea of like a tech tree or something. They don't really work as a sub tech tree or anything like that, which would be would be a little bit of a worry. But no, it would be nice to see that stuff, and maybe they could even add it in camo boxes or something. Maybe that could be something that they focus on, which would be cool too. But if they're not in the game, they should be in the game. And if they should be in the game, hopefully they will be going forward. Thank you for the Prime subscription, Yamleo. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. It's very much appreciated. Thank you very much, man. Is Discord fucked for me? I don't have it open, Alex. I could check, though. Is it not working? I have no idea. Maybe the servers are down. Is Discord working for anybody? Yeah, we're doing the tech talk today, Yumleo. Just to go through it, which is quite fun. Yeah, maybe their servers are down or something. Yeah, it says degraded and unavailable servers. We'll continue to investigate the issue. Well, hopefully they sort it out, because obviously it's quite nice when it works. Let's see. The Twitch subscribers bring a lot of cash for me. I can't remember the percentage I get when it comes to subscription, but I think it's less than 50% on each subscription, and then once again I have to pay taxes on top of it. So I think I worked it out last year. It might have changed because of regional stuff. It might be less now, but I got about 20% of each subscription before I had to do my own taxes. So every little helps. The best way to actually support stuff, though, is through Patreon, and also obviously direct donations. But yeah, for me, as I said, that's not a huge part of what I do. I don't pay a tax on Patreon when it comes to the American to Canadian thing, but I do pay taxes on the Patreon stuff. So basically, I don't get taxed twice. So, well, it's the same with the YouTube stuff. Like, so right, basically, thank you for the raid, Kaiser von Grau. That's very kind of you. Basically, when it comes to like the monetization stuff on YouTube, you lose 50% of it before you even start, because YouTube takes their cut, right? And that cut is different depending on, the different people you're looking at. But let's just say it's 50%. Then you lose a percentage because you have to pay a specific amount in American tax, depending on obviously your income levels and stuff. And then I have to pay taxes on top of that for Canadian income too. So there are 3 levels of percentages that are taken out of what I get. which is why it's much more beneficial doing this stuff if you're actually in America, you know. If you're not in America, you get absolutely reamed anally, which isn't very fun. Hey, Futcher, nice to see you, man. Nice to see you too, Kaiser. Hopefully life's okay. But, yeah, we're doing the tech talk today, so we're going through all the different stuff and having a good time. Let's see what Insane Robot says again. Regarding the topic of game modes discussed last week, I believe you're right. Too many of them will affect the player base, and then some people will not even touch some of the additional game modes. I believe the key is to improve the existing ones. I know Gaijin's always working on it, but I feel it goes in the wrong direction sometimes. For example, all RRB maps are starting to look the same, where all targets are in the middle and everyone goes straight to the fight. Ground also started to look generic too, where maps are getting narrower and forced to play on corridors, alleys, where the elements of surprise gets removed. It is an interesting talking point, because I haven't got it yet, Alex, but I'm gonna set it up after I've finished the tech talk. But yeah, we'll do it. Like, that's what we're gonna do. So it's one of the problems with basing stuff around the average, right? And I think it's one of the problems we're gonna run into in War Thunder a while ago. In the future. Like, because we're starting to run into it now. One of the issues with basically homogenizing everything and putting it together is you remove creative independence and make everything more structured and streamlined to what people want. Now, from a game point of view, generally this is good because you make it so the pre-existing players and the people who played it before are, you know, really enjoying the stuff that you've made. But what happens at the end of the day when you have a situation where you actually now want to try and create something new or create something which is slightly different? Do you end up focusing on the people who... Do you end up focusing on just doing the same stuff over and over again? And then where is the breaking point for people where they find that super monotonous? Like, where does that get lost, right? And that's an interesting conversation to have. Like, when is too much too much? And when instead does stuff like that kind of disappear and just people get bored of it? And also, what happens to the people who didn't use the filters and didn't use the stuff beforehand, who are happy with what went on previously? Like, how do you balance those two sets of people? And I think that's really hard to do. It's something that's incredibly hard to do, actually, and something that really won't kind of fix itself until you get enough resentment to the status quo and then stuff change again, right? Which happens a decent amount. So we'll have to see what goes on. And I don't think we'll end up in that situation anytime soon, but it's something to think about going future. Hidden Edition, there's now a 4th icon for camos. A 4th icon? What do you mean? Like, you can pick more camos? So we have Mikazoid, tech spinning facts about OP vehicles. Fair enough, I can't remember what I said. I don't know. Vehicles are usually around the place quite aggressively. And the mod screen came in last update though, not this one. Oh, that one, yeah. Yeah, they added that in, which was quite fun. They've done a lot of good additions in that. It's been nice to see. So we have Airsoft Popcorn, which is a interestingly fun name. We have green, tan, and white camos now. There is red, white, and blue. One for urban camos, I guess. Oh. That's weird. My question is that since top tier vehicle armor is classified and unknown, why can't Gaijin buff certain vehicles that are underperforming? For example, why can't Gaijin buff the Ariete armor to the point where it would be more competitive? The reason they would buff them instead of lowering their BR would be that they could avoid creating large gaps in the tech trees and maybe even fill some. I'm not asking Gaijin to make vehicles like the Ariete have insane armor, just that they should have usable armor. I mean, you could, at the end of the day, do that. The issue is, like I said before, right? Like, you know, they should do that. Here's an interesting question, and one that is always a very uncomfortable one. If the Arietes are underperforming, why haven't they gone down in BR? And then the answer that you give is because only a select amount of people play the vehicle, and therefore it's used by gigachads and nobody else. We class this as the challenger reasoning, because the only people who play challengers are gigachads, which is why the vehicle never goes down in BR. It's also something that can never be proven, and an easy way of kind of just dismissing topics and hard conversations. What if the vehicle actually is balanced at its BR? Especially now that they gave it better rounds, so it actually has the best rounds in the game at its BR. And what if the fundamental reason with the Ariete isn't the fact that the vehicle is not very good at its BR? It's the same issue that all those vehicles run into, is that they are not the top tier BR vehicles, therefore they get annihilated by everything that is top tier. But the Ariete is the one which is always discussed because it's the most obvious one, because every other nation actually has competitive vehicles that they can go into at the higher echelons. Now that is a conversation that nobody wants to have, because it kind of is one which just doesn't nuke all of the general thoughts around these things, but at the same time it creates an area of doubt, and also means that people would have to actually find other things to complain about. If you wanted to buff the Ariete, you could do it with the reload, you could do it with the armor, you could do it with pretty much anything you wanted. But they already did it with the round, and if it's still underperforming, then they will either reduce its reload or they'll increase its armor. They'll do all of those things. But the real question has to be, the true question, what if it is, at this point in time, not underperforming? What if it is just a belief that it's underperforming? Because when people look at the Ariete, they compare it to vehicles which are higher BR than it, because it's an end-of-the-line vehicle for Italy. And they're comparing an 11.7 to what should technically be 12.0s and 12.3s, but they haven't decompressed the BR properly yet. Surely that should be more of the conversation instead of the individual thought about the Ariete. Because right now they've literally just made a change where rank 8s get stock APF SDS now. And now you, in rank, 7 vehicles, which are basically the same BRs as you are, now have to face them with stock EFS. It's crazy. Hey Salsalator, nice to see you, man. Hopefully you're doing good. Yeah, it looks like Discord's dying, but don't worry, we have time. Hopefully they sort their stuff out. But yeah, so could they buff the armor? Yeah, sure. Could they buff the ammo? Yeah, sure. Could they buff any part of the vehicle? Yeah, sure. If it makes sense, sure, why not? But at the same time, they could make it the best vehicle in the game. You still have hardly anybody who plays it. That's another conversation that's hard to have. And one which I feel like people, whenever I've tried to talk about it, I just get vitriol and I just get annoyance. So I just don't talk about it anymore. So we have Away With You, Valbega. Hey Tech, I'm sad to hear you got the few, but also I'm glad you didn't get the infamous man flu. No, I got the infamous overworking fatigue though. But that's all good. That is kind of how it is. Asked about the fate of the upgunned upgraded planes and their performance, since I was interested in how exactly they'll add, for example, the Romanian MiG-21. Like many modern MiG-21s, it was upgraded enough to use any modern armament, and that's where the problem is. Seeing how Gaijin sees modern rockets as a big deal, it might bump such a machine way too much in BR, understand where they come from, and I don't know if they'll add it to 8, but I can see them bumping machines like this to 11 OLM3. Granted, I don't play high tier, thus I'll ask you, how do you think they'll add vehicles like this? And then, P.S. I didn't talk about the upgunned tanks, since tanks don't seem to struggle that much. One of the reasons that pops into mind is the fact you can use the environment to your advantage while playing you can't. Anyway, hope you have a good week, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Yeah. Looking forward to Christmas. Should be quite fun. Should be a nice time. Basically, when it comes to these things, like, when it comes to stuff such as these vehicles, they always have the opportunity to not add those munitions to it. And there's a lot of vehicles in the game right now which are just missing munitions or ammunition or, you know, different sets of stuff they could carry. You know, even if you have a look at the A7 or, you know, the F-15 that's just come in, for example, the Gripen that's in for Britain, they are missing pieces of armament which they could easily have. They've always balanced vehicles based on what armament they have access to. And at the same time, I think what they should have really done in the past is not go too feisty with the types of ammunition they've given certain things compared to others. Because, yeah, it's when you have, like, these upgraded platforms, it is a bit of an issue when they have, like, a really good radar, they have, like, one really good weapon, and then they just feel awful to be able to play. So, yeah, they could easily do it by munitions, and if they decide to not do it by munitions, then instead it just basically comes down to situational use. So if something has something which makes it different compared to others and makes it usable, then, you know, it might be useless in 95% of scenarios, but maybe in that 5% it works pretty well. So that would be something to obviously focus on. But yeah, that's not always something that's about the place. So we have this. We have the only Lilin, I think. Good day again, Tech. I'm the lad who descended to Cast Madness on Tech Talk. You're recently. Anyways, thanks always for the long vids. It's all good. Regarding about limiting yourself for just playing tanks can be tough. I don't play aviation just for the simple reason I enjoy tanks more. And flying around aircraft and dealing with other aircraft just doesn't give me the kick like a good coffee. Venting about CAS out of the way, after finishing the French Grand Prix, I've finally branched out to China and the Brits. The recent economy changes have made life so much better. No premium tank in time, currently sitting at 7-7 China and 5-3 Brit within a month. Crazy. Yeah, it is kind of nuts. Also, one last thing, found out the balancing factor for some Chinese tanks is that they don't have any smoke rounds. Yep. Type 59 gets a stabilizer for no smoke shots or canisters, and Type 63 ZTS 63 doesn't get ESS. Kinda sad, but I understand why. Always thanks for the vids. It's all good. The other thing they also balance by is really shit targeting speed. So, and also long reloads. So, yeah, a lot of those Chinese vehicles have a ton of really nice factors, but they also have a ton of factors which are terrible, and that's why it's super important to try and to know how to play around them. And it isn't the easiest thing to do for a lot of people because of the way that they are. but it's nice to see you gaining different experiences. I get the fact that, you don't get the same buzz out of, playing everything, but at the same time, it's one of those things that has to kind of be mastered so you don't feel awful playing different stuff, Like it's something that, can help with. But then I have Type 10. Hey Tech, what a crazy week. And now we wait for the F-18 for about a year, although I don't think it'll get as hyped as the F-15. Tech is like my local daily news. Of course, the Challenger 2 only gets heavier. Imagine being heavier than the Abrams. Crazy, right? They will probably add a Type 10 with some cosmetic addition and call it a rank 8. Japan, it would still be one of the best tanks to top tier still. China will only get stronger. And I like that China is a rising power in the game. It's sad people prefer shorter videos, TikTok and Subway Surfers gameplay in the background. Anyway, can not wait for the volcano map. I want to go max straight into a volcano, see if I drown in lava or I hit a solid floor. Have a nice day and drink water. Water is definitely important. Yeah, the demographics of people generally don't have a ton of time, and also the amount of effort it takes to make something long form instead of short form is very, very different, right? Like it's the amount of effort it takes to have an idea and then make it into practice. Like a lot of it is down to like the imagination factor at that point, right? For stuff such as like TikToks and things like that. Like that's where the skill is. Whereas the skill of doing stuff like this is basically keeping your brain intact and also being able to discuss about a bunch of different issues that are not always present, for all the people. There's a lot more areas of knowledge you need for this, which can be a bit of a pain, but at the same time, it's the part that I'm pretty decent at, so I'll just do that. I haven't respaded it yet, Teddy, not yet. It's also the bit I actually enjoy, which is the important thing. Yeah, I think they'll add like a Type 10 with some cosmetic stuff. They might add, the Korean stuff. They may also just bump up stuff to rank 8, which is what they're doing with all the other nations. What will be very interesting right now is to see how certain nations increase in their setup. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to a nation like France, what happens to a nation like Japan. Where does it go from here? Those topics are very interesting to me for, kind of the future. So we have KCEG. I get bombed in Spall multiple times per match in Ground RB and it's not fun, but in Ground AB it doesn't happen. Should they limit the amount of air spawns in Ground RB like they do in Ground AB? No. Thank you. No, they shouldn't. Become proficient when it comes to air superiority aircraft. Learn to use AAs. And also learn to read when a game is over, which is one of those things which is very important in War Thunder. In War Thunder, a lot of the skill in terms of not getting spawn trapped or anything like that is being able to read a situation and not just click the button to spawn in over and over again. Sometimes you do have to know when to spawn and when not to spawn. Sometimes you need to know when there's a lost battle. Sometimes you need different lineups to deal with different situations. Simple as, at the end of the day. Then we have Jalen Williams. Hey Tech, I'm getting close to finishing the US Grand Tree. It's my first one. What tree would you recommend as a second? I'm thinking of Sweden. I refuse to try Russia, but I'm open to anything else. China or Sweden then. China or Sweden or Britain. I would, if you're going to do the 3 options, roll a dice, whatever it lands on. Get each nation to rank 3 and then see how you feel. If you just want to do 2 options, flip a coin, China or Sweden. But yeah, China will give you a lot of different experiences across the board. Sweden pretty much is a conglomeration of a bunch of different nations nowadays too, so it's not too bad at the end of the day. It might be fun to see what happens, but yeah, I always say get every nation to rank 3, because even if you have a bad experience with a nation getting it to rank 3, you know how it feels. The amount of effort you put into getting a nation fully completed is the same amount of effort you could easily get each nation to rank 3. And also you can start doing daily specials with each nation, and at the same time do events and do all of this different things if you want to. So it's much better just to do that. So if you want my honest opinion about what individual nations, China or Sweden, maybe Britain as a third option, but really what should be done is trying to get every nation to rank 3 so you can use it for multiple things. So we have War Dog Gangster. Ayo, Tech. If they added the F-86H Saber Dog, do you think it will over-tier it or under-tier it? Happy holidays. The H is the one which only has rockets, right? I'm pretty sure. Isn't it? It's the one with like the thing out the bottom of it. Isn't it? Target conversion. Wait, production model. Wait. It's built with low altitude bombing system and provisions for nuclear weapons. What? It will probably go at 8.7, since they just won't add its nuclear capabilities. There you go. So, yeah, why not? What I'm interested in is West German aviation. Everyone and their mother got their F-16, F-15, except West Germany, still stuck with 10.7 F4F. It's ice time, baby! I hope you like ice, 996, because it's ice time. Yeah, I think they'll just stick at the same BR as all the other ones. Then to show, oh man, good old Norway, the meta was so defined by the map design. Yeah, it was. Like, literally the way that Norway worked was everybody... So, if you're on the attacking side, right? You would follow the bombers to the bases, right? And then the bombers would hit the bases and then you'd defend them. The defending side would climb to the bombers, and then if you dived on the bombers if you dived onto the bombers at the bases, then if you didn't kill them, you were just done. And then if you attacked the high bombers, then you got attacked by the fighters afterwards. And then there was obviously the people who went to your bases. It was just the whole map. It didn't matter how big it was. The whole map was so streamlined. Like, literally, there was nothing going on for it. I'm getting real sick of these guided bombs, by the way. I can't do anything about that. He's literally just spawned and dropped his bomb straight away. Like, what am I even supposed to do? But yeah, that seems super fair in arcade. You know, talking about the CAS stuff. But yeah, so yeah, it was nuts at the end of the day. It was very poor. So we have Denisha Koju. Hello, Tech. I'm still waiting for the TU-95. I mean, fair enough. I'm still waiting for Sean Wayne Gacy to be seen as not the killer, and the CIA to finally answer for their crimes to humanity. And we have Antonio J. Moles. No one have played Air RBEC because the RP modifier was just crap, so no one can grind playing it. I like this game mode. I hope they put it in the game again, but with better rewards. And as I brought up last time, that's the fucking problem with the game mode. People did not play Air RBEC because they enjoyed it. It was literally, they only played it because you got better rewards than standard battles. And that is not a good enough reason to put in a new game mode to a game. Because that is the softest part of this like scenario which can be changed. They can just completely change the rewards of how things work. And that, when the narratives around Air RBEC were all about the RP and the SL and how much you could get, I realized it was doomed. Because it doesn't matter how much you can get from these things. What matters, right, is the actual gameplay. Because if you can get more, like, if you're worried about modifiers or if you're worried about how much you can get out of things, then, as I said, you can just change how specific game modes or how much specific game modes give. And there you go. You've just created the same scenario and not had to create a whole new mode. So the gameplay actually has to be fun and engaging, not just for grinding, right? That's the problem. Because at that point, just buff rewards in other game modes. And there you go. Now RBEC is dead. But that is exactly what I said when it came to what we talked about in the tech talk about RBEC. Those exact words. Because that's all I heard about it. I didn't hear about the gameplay. I didn't hear about how interesting it was. I didn't hear about, people enjoying the AI running around. I heard, hey, I get a lot of stuff from bombing bases and airfields. This is really cool. That's not a good game mode, sorry. That's just Call of Duty shipment. So it's all good. Then we have Fired Fuel. Will you ever go back to Enlisted, or is it a lost cause? I'll go back to it. The never say never as always. They've done a bunch of responding to community things recently, which is interesting to read about. The simple fact is, the issues I had with Enlisted have been half solved, which is really cool. So I think the progression changes they've done are super positive. Basically copying the War Thunder system is incredibly good. I really like it because it is a much better system and a much fairer system for the average player. I know a lot of people are not happy with it because they have to do a bunch of clicking and sorting out their stuff. I understand the annoyance, but at the same time, it is still a better system. Way better than the previous one. The other part, which, haven't been talked about too much, is the fact that they are still adding power on top of power on top of power in terms of vehicles. Their solution of solving the Tiger 2 problem, which by the way used to be the Tiger 1 problem, which used to be the Panther problem, which used to be the Jumbo problem, which used to be the T50 problem, which used to be the T28 problem, which used to be the Panzer 4 problem, which used to be the M4 Sherman in Tunisia problem. Are you seeing a fucking pattern here, by the way? Are you seeing a pattern? All of these problems stem from vehicles being way too powerful in the game. And their solution to deal with how rampant the vehicles are in the game is to add more vehicles, which are seen as stronger. I know people always memed on the idea of making War Thunder with infantry. I didn't realize that the devs and the decision makers behind the game also believed in that very stupid idea. It has made me incredibly disheartened to see what they've decided to do when it comes to just adding stuff over and over and over again. And it has just crippled the game. They really started to believe the whole, 20% of the game should just be able to annihilate the other 80%. It's not fun, it's not enjoyable, it's crap. So the main reason why I played Enlisted, which was for the infantry combat, which was for, the aggressive, rapid, kind of like everybody just smashing together and shooting and everything going crazy in an infantry sense, is gone. Now instead, it's vehicle focused, and that's why so many people have just completely left the game. Because a small percentage of people can get in vehicles, and everybody else is just bots. I hope APCs help infantry against the tanks. No, they won't. The APCs, the premium ones have guns, the other ones don't. And at the same time, there is no APC you can bring in that deals with a Tiger 2. There is no APC you can bring in that deals with an IS-244. There is no APC that deals with a Hori prototype. There is no APC that deals with an M26. There's hardly any weapons in the game that can deal with those things. But yeah, it's ridiculous. And, you know, the dreams of them adding more modern combat and, you know, stuff like that is pretty much in tatters for me at this point. Because if this is how they see the game, and this is how they, you know, want to look at it going forward, it is just a wreck. Like, you talk to any game designer and you say to them, you know what? I want to have 30% of a match dominate over the other 70%. I want a scenario where that is true. And I think that would be fun. The first thing you would do is you turn around to a person like that and you go, what happens if the 70% stops playing? What happens when they don't try and strive to become that 30%? Because what you've done is you've put no negative incentive for leaving battles. So if people get the wrong maps, they just leave and move on. What do you do? Oh, well, your game dies, doesn't it? Well, this is the stage we're in at the moment. So, we'll see what goes on. The problem they have is they can't change what they've already done. Because, you know, it just wouldn't work. So it sucks. Hopefully in the future it changes. But I doubt it will. So then we have Uncle Motu. You're wrong about Trickster, though. People are not only mad because of the Spall liner case, he is notorious for constantly dismissing good evidence for NATO stuff while setting entirely different standards for Russian-Soviet stuff. You seem to have a very strong opinion of the people criticizing him. Maybe you should look deeper into the matter. We actually talked about this the other day. No, it's pretty simple. Even if somebody is a shithead, you shouldn't dox them. That's pretty much it at the end of the day. Like, I've talked many times in many different areas about the fact that I think there is a problem with technical moderation and biases. I also know that narratives get spread constantly about what certain people do and what certain people don't do. Right? And what I would advise people to do is to go read a lot of these reports and to go look at what a lot of these technical moderators are dealing with, because it's not very fun. I would also like to say that once again, I think a lot of them are not very good at what they do, but they're also volunteers, and if you decide to get rid of them, then you get the B-tier lot in, who are even worse when it comes to these things. So what you end up doing, and as I said before, you have a bunch of people justifying people literally getting witch hunted, getting doxxed, getting attacked, just people just going after them because they don't pass the reports they think that they should pass in a video game. If you think that one person is dismissing reports, you can't just go to another technical moderator, you know that, right? If you think they're more favorable to your cause. And now you may realize what the problem is. And it's not the individual people, it's the fact that they're humans, and it's the fact that the rules that are set behind them are not good enough, which has been the problem as it always has. I would love for people to just sit one day in these guys' shoes. And a lot of people would realize that it isn't the way that it is described and how it's all set up. It's also something you couldn't get me to do at all, especially for free. Hey fanboy, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing alright today. But yeah. Like, I don't care how bad somebody is at a volunteer position. You don't fucking create angry mobs after them. As somebody who has had to deal with angry mobs in the past, it's quite annoying, especially when they're fucking wrong. Which happens a lot for me, unfortunately, because of narratives which are spread about shit I've never said, and with people just completely making up shit that I've said in the past. I'd like to remind everyone what happened maybe a few years ago, where there was I can't remember which vehicle it was. It was one of the Leopard versions, right? It was one of the Leopard versions, one of the prototypes, which was coming into the game. And it was leaked, or it was it was like the thing had come out about it, and like we were discussing what it had, because it was the autoloader one, so it was like the 2AV or whatever, or 1AV or whatever the fuck it was, right? It was that one. And I found the website where they got the information about it from. So I basically just said, hey, here's the information, this is what it said, this is all of this stuff, right? And because of suggestions passed to the devs, and because one of the guys who was notorious for straight up just copy and pasting full internet pages to the past to the devs, had made a suggestion which went through the whole thing and just copy and pasted verbatim everything that was there, people had decided that I'd nicked this dude's work called Piev. Whereas Piev, for years, as somebody who's actually covered past the developers, is a classic case of straight up plagiarism. So they blamed me for nicking this guy's stuff, which he didn't write in the first place, and was from a separate source that he'd copy and pasted. I had the Italian nutcases going after me, I had the fucking War Thunder Reddit on my dumbass, and I had a bunch of other people just joining along for fun. It ain't very enjoyable, like, having to, like, open your email and just seeing people go after you for shit that you didn't even do, by the way. It kind of makes you a bit disillusioned to the whole thing. I still remember, like, because I went for a workout. Hey, Night Fever, nice to see you. I went for a workout on the night, and I came back to just, like, my email account just full of random shit, and, like, my Discord full of just random shit from people just saying how much of a shit person I was, and I was like, what the fuck have I done this time? Because sometimes I can get why people get annoyed about my opinions, because it isn't always opinions that are beneficial to everybody, right? But at the same time, like this time, I was like, what the fuck did I do? And then everybody was just blaming me for, like, nicking shit from this person when I just didn't. So I had to make a fucking video about it, how dumb this whole thing was. And then, guess what? Was able to diffuse it within a night. But when stuff gets out and when stuff starts getting spread amongst people, as we've seen a lot of the time with a lot of different things, what ends up happening is, hey Carter, nice to see you. What ends up happening is people don't see the response and don't see the thing that, you know, they were wrong about, and instead they just continue doing it over and over and over again. And so even if you fight back at it, there's still a certain amount of people who still think I just nicked everything from that guy, even though he just plagiarized this whole fucking website. So you have to constantly deal with nutters like that all the time. It's fucked. But you still got to do it, because what's the alternative? So luckily for me, I'm able to make videos about this and how ridiculous the whole thing is. And not misdirect, but basically show my side. People who don't have those platforms and people go after them for this stuff, they're just screwed. And And because they don't respond, and because the crazies don't get what they want, what ends up happening is they start doxing people, which once again has also happened to me in the past, and it's not very fucking fun. Like, I don't know how I can explain it to somebody who hasn't had to deal with this, who hasn't had to deal with the rigmarole of just having what feels like an army of people just at your door with bats. Like, it's not very fun. I don't care how much this person, like, refused to look at reports or rejected them. Because I know 10 or, 5 or 10 other people who would have accepted them. And you just go unlucky with the person you ran into. So just go fucking message them. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't know. Simple as. The VAR debate one is funny. I mean, I think VAR's a good idea, like, in general. Like, refs in pretty much all sports are pretty trash. Like, I mean, recently in the NFL, there's been huge controversies over refereeing decisions. But yeah. I'm wrong about the fact that a dude got doxxed over video game reports, and that's bad. Because according to some people, he did it too many times. I don't give a shit if he's done it 5,000 times. You don't do that, right? It's a video game. Grow up. Holy shit. So we have a DDS gamer. What about Spanish vehicles? Yeah, sounds good. They should add them to the French tree. And we have Alice. Is there Slovakian language for the T-72M2? Slovakian is in the game, I think, as one of the voice languages, so I'm guessing so. I don't know if it's fully in. It might be Serbian, actually, I'm thinking of, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in, isn't it? I'd have to check on the things, but yeah, I think it's there. So we have Kiwi Flyer, Russian plane spooked me. That's all I have to say. Bye. Well, fair enough. Play rank 3 and 4. They won't spook you that much. They're pretty crap, actually. Russia is interesting, because at rank 1, they're pretty good. Rank 2, they're pretty decent. Rank 3 and 4, they're garbage. Rank 5, it's incredibly hit and miss. And rank 6 and 7 and 8, once again, incredibly hit and miss for those types of vehicles. Interesting to look at. I need to slow down. This tire's going to kill me. There we go. So we have royalty. Wow, I'm quite early. Hope you all have a good one. Yeah, it'll be nice. Everything's good. And we have Augustin, overpowered. I call it realistic. War Thunder isn't realistic. And we have Atlas Row. What was the controversy on the forums? Pretty much the same controversy that always exists. I am not happy, or individual is not happy with either state of game or also what is in game at moment. Therefore, go to forum and complain. Other individuals get involved because they feel the same way. Go next. Every so often, Gaijin responds to stuff because they feel obliged to, and they basically just say what they're doing anyway, and then everybody claps. And then we move on to the next thing, and then just keep going around in circles. Hey Disco Jacob, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. So yeah, that's pretty much it at the end of the day. So we have some thumbs up from Jadu. Then we have 109575558. I just think that after going to Taylor Swift experience, you liked it. Nothing to be ashamed of. There, happy Christmas to you and your family and all of this in the tech community. Agreed. Merry Christmas to all. Should be a good one. I think we have one more tech talk before Christmas, so should be quite nice. But the The I didn't really enjoy the concert part of it. I just kind of enjoyed watching the reaction to everything because it was just mesmerizing. Like you know when you feel like you're in a, you know when you feel like you're in a, like literally a movie, and where just everybody's acting like an NPC. That's what it kind of felt like. It was super weird. Yeah, I do the tech talks on YouTube. They're in the podcast playlist section. But yeah. I definitely enjoyed the experience, but it wasn't because of the Taylor Swift part. It was more just watching everybody around. I found the whole thing very confusing, but would I do it again? No. Am I happy I did it? Kind of. Because I think it's something that everyone should experience, because it was just nuts. So why not? But that's all the questions on the Tech Talk. A long one this time. But then again, they all are pretty long nowadays. A lot to talk about, a lot to go through. It's been good though. Do you guys have any questions on Twitch before we, relax and get some food and have a bit of fun? Well, the same thing happened to me, Scooya. Like when it came to it. By the way, don't let her know, but there is an extended Taylor Swift experience also available online right now, and it's like $20. So don't mention it. Okay, try and make it so miss that. Am I now a Taylor Swift fan? I'm more Taylor Swift curious. I want to kind of understand what the hype is, because all I see is very generic music aimed at a part of the population that seems to be quite depressed. So I'm actually more interested in the psychological phenomenon of what is Taylor Swift as an idea. Because after reading a bunch of psychological studies and also opinion from, different areas of, the like I suppose that sphere, it is really interesting to see the cultural impact of what she has, but also it's the same issue as always, where people think that she is the one who's having the cultural impact, but it's actually the team, you know, the team behind her, which is causing it. Just Spade when I get it. And will Guardian fix the game? 2032. I'll try Papa Stalin, but no promises. You know how it goes. When will Guardian add War Thunder Plus subscription? That would be awful. Premium Plus, baby. I think it's more likely they add those types of systems. I feel like will get added, but they won't just be as on the nose, because that's usually how this stuff goes. Looking back on the year, what nation had the biggest glow up? Sweden, probably. Like Sweden, they added all the Finnish vehicles, obviously the Gripen at the end of it. They added a bunch of different functionalities in the middle of the year for Sweden. Like, they're probably the one to go for. That type of question I'll be able to answer next week, though, because I'm going to actually have a look through all that stuff. Nope. Do you think the name of a vehicle can affect how you perform? I've been playing the OES, but calling it the Megatron makes me feel like a god. Yeah. Optimism is always going to be more beneficial than pessimism. So if you can find a way of making things sound better or look better to you, you will feel better in it, right? It's kind of like the whole confidence walk thing, isn't it? If you walk like, or if you walk like, it'll be different on how you feel and how people perceive you. So yeah. It's why you can play one vehicle one day and play the next day and it feels completely different. There's that factor and then also what you face. It's weird. What do you think of the login via mobile on your account? Incredibly positive. I just hope they don't go too manic with the stuff that they mix and match. Because, as a person who, it's the destiny thing again, right? Like, so Destiny added in, of course, their standard stuff, but then Destiny also, they were like, hey, so if you want to get more of the story, you have to look at this, and you have to look at that, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. And, that's all good and everything, but, sometimes I just want to play the game, bro. Like, I don't want to have a look at any of these other things. So yeah, I hope it doesn't become a thing where it's like, okay, so if you want to enjoy all aspects of War Thunder, you're gonna have to play the mobile, and you're gonna have to maybe play this and play that. So yeah, I think Carter got a nuke in the Zaklam. Well, I don't think a full nuke, but a part nuke. Do you play any sim? Is there anything you'd like to see in it? More AI targets really. I play sim sometimes, but most of the time it's more just to kind of get like achievements and stuff done. I like the idea of more historical scenarios in sim, since it is supposed to be a simulator. Will be quite fun. Did you know the Raxton Jagdpanzer, aka the Bad Hot at 8.0, can now get 2 hand-guided missiles? Yee! Goddamn. That's crazy. Yeah, there you go. 3/4 of the SP was in the Zaklam. Crazy. Right, that'll be the end of the tech talk. A long one, but as I said, a good one. Enjoyed this one. We'll get it up on Sunday, and we'll continue streaming. But all the people who are on YouTube, peace be with you. See you next time. Bye bye.